My family treated me like a servant until my billionaire wife walked in. That sounds like revenge fantasy. It was worse. I did not even know she was my wife yet. For years, the Pierce family kept me near doors, shoes, bags, and errands, close enough to use and far enough to deny. So when I walked into the county clerk's office chasing one clean escape, I thought the worst lie in the room was the fake bride standing beside me. The county clerk looked from the screen to my face and pushed my application back through the glass. Pierce, you cannot apply for a marriage license, she said, loud enough for the line behind me to hear. You are already legally married. The woman beside me, the one I had paid to play bride for one afternoon, yanked her hand out of mine like my skin had burned her. I did not blame her. At Stonebridge County Clerk's office, bigamy was a word people whispered after criminals, not after men in rented jackets who were trying to escape a family dinner. The clerk turned the monitor toward me. 2 license photos sat side by side on the screen. Mine looked tired. Hers looked like it belonged on the wall of a boardroom. Name: Victoria Ashford. I read it once, then again. The fake bride slapped my deposit receipt against my chest. You said this was clean. It was supposed to be. Keep your supposed to be. She snatched the cash from my hand before I could answer and walked out with more dignity than I had left. The clerk folded her arms. Do you want me to call security? I took out my phone, photographed the screen before she could turn it back, and sent it to Jules Knox. Find Victoria Ashford. Find how my name got beside hers. Quietly, Jules replied in 6 seconds. That name is not quiet. That was the first useful thing anyone said all morning. I left the clerk's office with no license, no fake bride, and a printed record that claimed I already had a wife. By the time I reached the Pierce house, Marla Pierce had called me 12 times. I answered none of them. The 13th came from Richard Pierce, which meant the situation had become expensive. The Pierce house looked polished enough to pretend nobody inside had ever been cruel. Black iron gate, white columns, imported stone, and a front hall where I had learned to stand near the wall until someone needed something carried. Marla was waiting under the chandelier with Preston beside her. Preston had one foot on a low bench while a servant polished his dress shoe. He wore the soft smile he saved for witnesses, the one that said he was gentle because no one had made him pay for being vicious. Marla saw the paper in my hand before she saw my face. You finally found some desperate woman to marry you? She asked. Good. Maybe now you'll stop dragging shame through this house. I held up the record. The clerk says I already did. Preston laughed first. Even a fake bride ran away from you? Richard came out of the study with a tie half knotted at his throat. Why are you here making noise? Because your son is committing fraud at a county office, Marla snapped, pointing at me. Richard's eyes moved over me, bored until he saw the Ashford seal at the top of the page. His hand tightened on his tie. Where did you get that? From the clerk. Do not play with that name in my house, Richard said. That was the closest Richard ever came to sounding afraid of something that was not a quarterly loss. Pierce Energy had spent months trying to get close to Ashford Group. Preston's engagement to Isabel was not romance to Richard. It was a bridge, a boardroom shortcut, and a way to make the Pierce name look cleaner than it was, which meant the woman on my county record was not just powerful. She was the door they were all begging to enter. Preston leaned in, still smiling. Who is the unlucky woman? I let him read the name. He laughed again, shorter this time. Victoria Ashford? You couldn't pick a smaller lie? Marla snatched the printout from me. She read the name, then looked at me like I had stepped mud onto a clean floor. Do you know who that is? Apparently my wife. Her hand lifted. For a second I thought she would slap me right there. Then Richard barked, "Enough!" Not to protect me. Richard had never wasted energy on that. He protected the name on the paper. Victoria Ashford controls Ashford Group, Richard said, each word tight. She does not marry strays from county offices. Marla shoved the printout back at my chest. If some cheap woman helped you forge this, pay her to disappear before Victoria sees your stunt. Cheap? I asked. Preston's smile recovered. Nolan, let's be honest. Any wife of yours would have to be cheap. Eleanor Pierce sat near the window in the sitting room, wrapped in a gray cardigan, though the house was warm. She had not spoken since I entered. She rarely did when Marla was in command. But when Preston laughed, Eleanor's fingers tightened around the little plate on her lap. Nolan, Eleanor said softly, eat something first. Marla turned on her. Do not feed him today. He needs discipline, not sandwiches. Eleanor lowered the plate. I looked at the sandwich, then at Marla. Funny, the only meals I remember in this house came from the woman you just told to be quiet. Preston's smile thinned. Marla stepped closer. You ungrateful little... Richard cut her off again, this time because a servant had appeared at the hall entrance. Pierce, the servant said to Richard. The Ashford cars are 5 minutes out. The house changed before anyone admitted it. Marla's mouth shut. Preston lowered his foot from the bench. Richard finished his tie with both hands. I looked at the printout in my hand. Victoria Ashford was coming here. Preston brushed imaginary dust from his sleeve. Father, Isabel said. Her aunt is only coming because she wants to inspect the Pierce family herself. Then nobody embarrasses us, Richard said. His eyes landed on me. Especially not Nolan. Marla gave me a smile with no warmth. Go upstairs. Preston needs the black shoes from his room. Preston lifted one polished shoe, then let it drop deliberately at my feet. The leather hit the floor with a soft, expensive slap. Actually, Preston said, these need one more wipe. You always did that well. The servant froze with the cloth in his hand. Eleanor's plate trembled. For years, that was how it worked. Preston dropped something. Marla looked at me. Richard pretended not to see. I bent down, and the house remembered its favorite lie. Preston was the heir, and I was the mistake allowed to breathe near him. This time, I stepped over the shoe. Preston's smile died first. Then, the servant stopped breathing. I walked past him and placed the printed record on the side table, face up, where Victoria Ashford's name could stare at all of them. Marla grabbed my arm. Pick it up! No. Her nails dug through my sleeve. I said pick it up. I looked at Preston. Tell your servant to do it. He's already holding the cloth. The servant went pale. Preston went red. Marla raised her hand again, but Richard caught her wrist. Not for me. Never for me. The front drive had filled with black cars. Control yourself, Richard hissed. The first Ashford guard entered without asking permission. He scanned the hall, then stepped aside. Isabel Ashford came in next. 4 years earlier, Isabel had chased me with sweet coffee, late texts, and enough promises to make a fool think affection could survive class. 3 months ago, she accepted Preston's ring, because Marla had started calling him the real Pierce heir in public. Now Isabel passed me like I was a coat rack. Her eyes flicked to the printout on the table, but she did not stop long enough to read it. Nolan, she said, with the kind of pity people practice in mirrors. Still standing where you don't belong? Isabel, I said, still choosing furniture by price tag? Her smile sharpened. Preston stepped between us fast. Then Victoria Ashford entered. No one announced her. They did not need to. The hall bent around her. She wore a black suit with no jewelry except a thin watch. Arlo Finch walked half a pace behind her, carrying a tablet and the expression of a man who had already decided everyone in the room was a threat. The guards moved like doors opening before a storm. Richard bowed his head, just slightly, and hated that he had to. Ms. Ashford, he said. Pierce energy is honored. Victoria's eyes touched Richard, Preston, Marla, Isabel, then me. They did not warm. They did not recognize. They moved on like I was a file she had not opened. That should have solved one question. Instead, it made the certificate worse. Richard offered her the seat at the head of the sitting room. Not his own chair. Not the guest sofa. The head seat. Marla saw it and finally understood the weight of the woman whose name she had called cheap 5 minutes earlier. Preston performed perfectly. He greeted Victoria with humble respect. He spoke about Isabel like she was a treasure, and about Pierce energy like it was one signature away from greatness. Richard nodded. Marla smiled until her cheeks looked painful. I stayed near the side table. The printout stayed where I had left it. Victoria listened for less than 2 minutes before her gaze dropped to the paper. Arlo saw her see it. He moved first, but I picked it up before he could. Victoria looked at me then. Fully, Mr. Pierce, she said. Why are you holding a county marriage record with my name on it? The room went quiet enough for Marla's bracelet to click against her wrist. Preston's face brightened with panic disguised as offense. Ashford, Nolan has been acting unstable all morning. He probably made that to embarrass the family. Victoria did not look at him. I asked Mr. Pierce. I almost liked her for that. I handed her the printout. The clerk said I was already married. To you. Arlo stepped closer. Careful. Careful came late, I said. The county record came first. Victoria read the page once. Her face gave away nothing. She folded it with 2 fingers as if it might be contaminated. This is either a clerical error, she said, or a forgery committed by someone with a death wish. Then you should be relieved, I said. I've had a death wish since breakfast. Marla hissed my name. Victoria turned to Richard. I need air. Richard moved too quickly. Of course, the terrace is this way. Victoria walked out before he could escort her. Arlo followed. I waited 3 seconds, then followed them both. Preston caught my sleeve. Don't. I looked down at his hand. You already dropped one thing today. Don't add fingers. He let go. On the side terrace, Victoria stood by the stone rail, the city behind her and Arlo between us. I stopped where she could hear me without pretending I had cornered her. Victoria Ashford, I said. Honey. Arlo's head snapped up. Victoria turned slowly. The temperature on that terrace dropped without the weather helping. Do not call me that, she said. Fair. I was testing whether the marriage came with terms of endearment. It does not come with a marriage. I took out my phone and showed her the photo from the clerk's screen. Then someone at Stonebridge County Clerk's office is risking prison for a joke with both our faces. She looked at the screen. This time, something small shifted in her eyes. Not recognition. Calculation. I could work with calculation. Where did you get the original? She asked. The clerk's office. An hour ago. Why were you applying for a marriage license? To stop my family from selling my life by committee. Her stare sharpened with something other than suspicion. Arlo cut in. Ms. Ashford does not owe you an answer. No, I said. But if someone married me to her on paper, she owes herself one. Victoria handed the phone back. If you forge this, I will ruin you. Get in line. Arlo moved, but Victoria lifted one hand. He stopped at once. That was the first real answer she gave me. Not about the marriage. About power. She controlled the room without raising her voice. Inside the house, Preston had moved close enough to watch through the glass doors. Isabel stood beside him, Marla behind them. 3 people who had spent years calling me nothing were now staring at the woman whose name had appeared beside mine. Victoria saw them watching too. She stepped closer and lowered her voice so only I and Arlo could hear. You will not speak of this to my family. I already tried silence. It got me married. Her mouth tightened. You are not my husband. Then prove it faster than the county clerk did. She held my gaze for 1 second too long. Then she walked past me and went back inside. I followed at a distance. By the time we returned to the sitting room, Preston had already chosen his story. He looked wounded, gentle, noble, mobile, perfectly rehearsed. Ashford, Preston said, before I could speak. I'm sorry you had to be exposed to this. Nolan has always resented my engagement to Isabel. He followed you outside because he wants to use a fake record to damage our families. Isabel's eyes flicked to me. There was jealousy there, buried under disgust, but not enough to make her honest. Marla grabbed the opening. He has been unstable since childhood. We only kept him here out of pity, Eleanor whispered. Marla, quiet! Marla snapped. Richard looked at Victoria, then at me, then at the printout in her hand. What is it, Ashford? Pierce Energy will cooperate fully if you want this handled privately. Victoria folded the paper once more and gave it to Arlo. Her answer was cold enough to cut every apology in the room. Handle your own house first. Then she left. No accusation, no confirmation, no mercy. The black cars pulled away, and the Pierce house exhaled like it had survived a trial. Preston turned to me before the taillights reached the gate. You just cost us, he said softly. I smiled. Then Bill, my wife. His hand curled. Marla stepped between us with a look that promised blood. Tomorrow morning, Havenport University. Professor Brenner will be told you are withdrawing from your placement. You will leave this city before you drag Preston down with you. Preston picked up his shoe from the floor and handed it to the servant without looking at him. He wanted everyone to see the old order returning. Then he leaned close enough for only me to hear. If Victoria thinks our engagement is dirty because of you, he said, I'll make sure Professor Brenner remembers which Pierce son deserves a future. I looked at the faint crease his shoe had left in the rug. You could not even make me bend for leather. His smile returned, meaner than before. He had lied about the terrace and turned it into a weapon. The certificate had given me a wife I did not know. By sunrise, that wife's name was going to cost me my future. By 9 the next morning, Preston had moved from lying about Victoria to stealing my future. Professor Miles Brenner's office at Havenport University was small, crowded, and too honest for people like Marla. Books sat in uneven stacks. Coffee had burned itself into the air. My research file lay open on the desk with a red withdrawal form clipped to the front. Marla stood beside the professor's chair like she owned the building. Preston sat across from him like he had already inherited my seat. A plane ticket and a bank card waited on the edge of the desk. Professor Brenner looked at me when I came in, and the apology in his face told me Marla had arrived early. The folder beside his elbow held my notes, my acceptance letter, and the campus badge I had not even picked up yet. Marla had stacked them neatly, as if stealing a future became polite when the papers were aligned. Nolan, he said, I have not signed anything. Yet, Preston said gently. Professor, we all know this is cleaner. Nolan has family issues. He offended Victoria Ashford yesterday. The Pierce family cannot keep rewarding that kind of instability. I shut the door behind me. You call lying a family issue now? Marla turned. You followed Ms. Ashford onto a terrace and waved a fake marriage paper in her face. I showed her the county record. Preston gave a soft laugh for the professor's benefit. A forged record, Nolan. Professor Brenner looked from Preston to me. Is that true? The clerk showed it to me on the county screen, I said. But that is not why they are here. No, Marla said. We are here because you have embarrassed the Pierce name for the last time. She pushed the withdrawal form toward me. Sign. I looked at the paper. One signature would erase the placement I had earned. Not inherited, not begged for, earned. Preston leaned forward and placed his fingertips on the bank card. $50,000. Take it, leave Havenport tonight and stop making Mother chase you through public buildings, he said. Mother like the word belonged to him alone. Marla did not correct him. Professor Brenner's face hardened. A research placement is not a family coupon. Preston's smile stayed soft. Of course not, but Dr. Lark is a family connection. Pierce Energy has been trying to work with him for months. Eleanor has supported people like him for years. If anyone in this family deserves that introduction, it's me, Dr. Lark. I looked at Preston when he said the name. I knew enough about Dr. Lark to know Preston was not just lying. He was standing on a trapdoor and bragging about the view. Professor Brenner removed his glasses. Preston, Dr. Lark does not recruit people because their family owns a company. But you respect his work, Preston said. And you said Nolan's research direction aligned with his patents. I said Nolan's work was strong enough to discuss, Professor Brenner replied, not yours. Preston's fingers tapped the arm of his chair. Then let me sit in on the meeting. I represent Pierce Energy. Nolan represents nothing. Professor Brenner's voice cooled. Nolan represents the work that made Dr. Lark answer my email. The office went still for one useful second. Marla did not understand the line. Preston did. Preston's smile finally twitched. The bank card on the desk suddenly looked cheaper. Marla saw it and attacked the easier target. Me, strong, she said. He grew up eating Pierce food, wearing Pierce clothes and using Pierce money. If he has any skill, it came from this family. I laughed once. Marla's eyes sharpened. What is funny? You said Pierce food. I looked at Eleanor's name on the ticket folder, printed as the emergency contact Preston had tried to claim. The meals I remember came from Eleanor sneaking plates into the garden. You locked the pantry. Professor Brenner looked at Marla. Preston's jaw moved. Marla stepped toward me. Do not twist family discipline into victim theater. She asked for you this morning, Preston said, suddenly gentle again. I looked at him. He meant Eleanor. Preston saw the hit land and pressed harder. She wanted to see if you were eating. Mother told her you were busy ruining us. Marla smiled. Eleanor is too ill to be upset by your selfishness. Stay away from her until Preston's future is secure. There it was, the small knife they always kept for last. I had no claim to Eleanor in that house, no legal tenderness, no permission, just years of quiet plates pushed through garden doors and a woman who had looked at me like hunger was not my fault. You want discipline? I tapped the withdrawal form. Make Preston sign it. He's the one trying to take what he didn't earn. Preston stood. I am trying to protect this family from you. No, you're trying to wear my work like another polished shoe. His face darkened. Marla grabbed the bank card and shoved it against my chest. Take the money. You are lucky Preston is kind enough to give you anything. The card fell to the floor. I did not pick it up. Marla looked down, then at me. Her voice dropped. I raised you. You stored me. Her hand cracked across my face. The sound cut through the office. Professor Brenner stood so fast his chair hit the wall. Mrs. Pierce! My cheek burned. My ear rang. Marla breathed hard, furious that I had made her look ugly in front of a witness. Preston's mouth curved. He thought he knew the old scene. Marla hit me. I lowered my head. He played the gentle son. Everyone left with the lie intact. I walked past Marla. Preston blinked. What are you doing? I hit him, once. His head snapped sideways. Marla screamed. Before Preston could catch the desk, I caught his collar and hit him again. Twice. He dropped into the chair he had been stealing from me, blood bright at the corner of his mouth. Professor Brenner froze with one hand lifted, not because he approved, but because he had finally seen the math. Marla hit me once. Preston paid twice. Marla had trained me to swallow pain because it was cheaper than conflict. Preston had trained the room to enjoy it. That morning, I did not need a speech about dignity. I needed his blood on his perfect shirt where every person in the office could see the price had changed. I leaned close enough for Preston to hear every word while Marla watched from behind the professor's raised arm. From now on, anything she does to me lands on you twofold. Preston stared up at me, stunned, bleeding, exposed, and humiliated in the professor's office he had tried to conquer. Marla lunged, but Professor Brenner stepped between us. Enough. Marla pointed at me. Call security! Call the police! He assaulted Preston. Professor Brenner looked at Preston's split lip, then at the withdrawal form Marla had brought in, then at the bank card on the floor. I will call campus security if anyone pressures my student again, the professor said. And for the record, Preston Pierce has no recommendation from me. Preston's face changed. Professor Brenner picked up the campus badge, wiped a fleck of blood from the plastic with a tissue, and pushed it across the desk to me instead of him. Preston stared at the tiny strip of plastic like it had split his lip again. That was the first clean consequence of the morning, not the punch, the loss behind it. He had come for my seat and left with blood on his mouth. Marla shook with rage. You will regret this. I already regret letting you rehearse this long. I picked up the withdrawal form, tore it once, and dropped the pieces on Preston's lap. Then I turned to Professor Brenner. I'm sorry about your office. Professor Brenner looked at my face, then at Preston. Nolan, your placement remains yours. Leave before I change from professor to witness. I left. Outside, the campus path was too bright. Students crossed the quad with coffee and backpacks, glancing at my cheek, then away. I had been stared at worse. At least this time I had earned the mark honestly. A small paper bag bumped my shoe. I looked down. An old woman sat on the bench near the path, wrapped in an expensive cream coat over house slippers. Her silver hair was pinned crookedly. A medical bracelet circled her wrist. She looked at my swollen cheek like I had insulted her personally. "Who hit my grandson-in-law?" she demanded. I stared at her. "Ma'am, I think you have the wrong person." Her eyes narrowed. "Do not ma'am me after marrying my granddaughter." The word hit the same place the certificate had hit the day before. Granddaughter. I crouched so I would not frighten her. "What is your name?" She lifted her wrist proudly. The bracelet read, Ruth Ashford. Under it was an emergency number. Ashford! Of course, because apparently my life had decided one impossible wife was not enough. It had sent me her grandmother with snacks. Ruth opened the paper bag and took out a warm boiled egg. Before I could stop her, she wrapped it in a napkin and pressed it to my cheek. "Hold still," she ordered. "A husband cannot meet his wife looking like a kicked fence post." "I'm not her husband." Ruth patted my face harder. I held still. The warmth hurt, then helped. No one in the Pierce house had touched a bruise on me like that unless they were making it worse. I took out my phone and called the number on her bracelet. Arlo Finch answered on the second ring. "Who is this?" "Nolan Pierce. I found Ruth Ashford outside Havenport University." Silence. Then Arlo's voice turned sharp enough to shave bone. "Do not move. Do not touch her. Do not speak to her." Ruth snatched the phone from my hand. "Arlo, stop barking at my grandson-in-law." Another silence. This one was better. I took the phone back. "She seems confused, but she is safe." "Where are you exactly?" Arlo asked. "Campus path near Professor Brenner's building. Ms. Ashford is already on the way." "Victoria? You do not get to use her first name." Ruth leaned toward the phone. "He can. He is family." Arlo made a sound like he had bitten glass. 10 minutes later, a black car stopped at the curb hard enough to make students scatter. Victoria stepped out first. Arlo followed with 2 guards and the expression of a man arriving at a crime scene. Ruth brightened. "Victoria, look! I found him!" Victoria's eyes went from Ruth's hand on my sleeve to the egg against my face, then to the bruise. She did not ask if I was hurt. She did not ask who did it. She looked like she was collecting facts and deciding which ones could be used against me. "Ruth," Victoria said, voice controlled. "Come here." Ruth held my arm tighter. "No, he is hurt." Arlo pointed at me. "Step away from Ruth Ashford." "She has my sleeve," I said. "Take it up with her." Ruth glared at Arlo. "Do not be rude to my grandson-in-law." Victoria's mouth tightened at the word. "He is not your grandson-in-law." Ruth looked offended. "Then why did you marry him?" The campus path went quiet. A student passing with coffee slowed down. Arlo saw him and stepped into his line of sight. The student remembered he had somewhere else to be. Victoria looked at me. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. She found me." "That happens to you often?" "Only with Ashford women, apparently." Arlo moved again. Victoria stopped him with one glance. Ruth pressed the egg back to my cheek and whispered loudly, "She gets cold when embarrassed." "I heard that," Victoria said. "Good," Ruth replied. Victoria Ashford looked almost human for half a second. Not soft, not warm, just caught by someone she loved enough not to crush. Then the moment vanished. She turned to Arlo. "Transfer him $300,000. I looked up. "For what?" "For 1 week of food, transportation, clothes, medical supplies, and inconvenience," Victoria said. "If my grandmother insists on trusting you, I will not have her eating whatever you can afford." I almost laughed. That was nearly generous until the insult. It was not an insult. It was an assessment. Arlo took my payment information like it smelled bad. My phone buzzed before he finished typing. $300,000. 1 week. Marla had tried to buy my disappearance for $50,000. Victoria Ashford had just paid 6 times that because Ruth liked how I held an egg to my face. Ruth smiled. "See, my granddaughter is good to her husband." Victoria closed her eyes for half a second. Arlo whispered, "Miss Ashford, people are watching." "Then stop whispering," Ruth said. "You make guilt look suspicious." Arlo actually stepped back. It was the first time I saw anyone in Victoria's orbit retreat from someone other than Victoria. When Victoria opened her eyes, she looked at me like I was a locked door she intended to break. "You will keep your phone on," she said. "You will answer when Arlo calls. You will not take my grandmother anywhere without telling me." "Then take her now." Ruth's grip tightened. "No." Victoria looked at Ruth's hand, then at my swollen cheek, then at the campus office behind me where Marla's screams still felt fresh. Her next sentence came out colder because she hated needing it. "She stays with you until she calms down." Arlo almost choked. "Ms. Ashford." Ruth clapped once, delighted, then winced because the movement shook the egg against my cheek. Victoria saw the wince. Her face lost 1 layer of ice. Only 1. Then she recovered and made it a threat. "If she sleeps poorly, Mr. Pierce, I will know." Victoria turned back to Arlo. "One night. Guards outside. No argument." Ruth beamed. "I should have refused. I had a fake marriage mystery, a bleeding brother, a stolen university fight, and an Ashford assistant who wanted to wrap me in caution tape." Instead, Ruth put the warm egg in my palm and looked at me like I was someone worth protecting. I said, "Fine, one night." Victoria stepped closer. "If she is frightened, harmed, photographed, or used, I will make you regret the county clerk ever printed your name." I looked at her black car, her guards, her assistant, and the old woman clinging to my sleeve. "You people keep threatening me with things that already happened." Ruth tugged me toward the car. "Come on, grandson-in-law, we are going home." Victoria did not correct her fast enough. That was how I ended the morning, with Preston's blood on my knuckles, Victoria Ashford's money in my account, and her grandmother asleep against my shoulder like she had known me for years. By nightfall, Ruth refused the Ashford car, refused Arlo's guards, and refused to let go of my sleeve. By morning, she was in my East Row apartment, and the only address she kept whispering in her sleep was Ashford Ridge Estates. The first Ashford money hit my rent account before Ruth finished her second egg. $300,000 looked obscene beside my cracked kitchen counter. Ruth sat at that counter in one of my old sweatshirts, her cream coat folded carefully over the chair, tapping the warm egg against the table like it was a judge's gavel. "Too much salt," she announced. "I did not salt it." "Then you are underfeeding my granddaughter's husband." "I'm starting to think that title comes with chores." "It comes with breakfast." Ruth pushed half the egg toward me. "Eat." So, I ate. That was the strange part. Not the money, not the guards parked downstairs, not Arlo Finch calling every 15 minutes like suspicion had a schedule. The strange part was an old woman in my cheap apartment deciding I deserved food before questions. Ruth slept after breakfast. Not lightly, not nervously. She curled on my narrow couch, pulled my spare blanket to her chin, and slept so deeply the guard outside knocked twice to ask if she was still breathing. When I sent Victoria a photo of Ruth asleep, she called within 10 seconds. "Where is that?" "My apartment." "I can see that," Victoria said. "Why is she comfortable?" "Maybe my couch has lower standards than your estate." There was a pause. "Do not joke about my grandmother's condition." "Then stop treating me like I caused it." Arlo took the phone from her. "Bring Ruth Ashford to the Ashford Group lobby. Alone. You will hand her over and leave." Ruth opened one eye from the couch. "Tell Arlo he sounds ugly on the phone." I told him. He hung up. Ruth refused the lobby handoff. She refused the guard. She refused the black car when it arrived downstairs. She said she wanted Victoria, and when I said Victoria was busy, Ruth looked at me with sudden cunning. "Then, take lunch to her." "I'm not a delivery service." "You are a husband." Worse. That was how I reached the Ashford Group executive entrance wearing a delivery jacket and carrying a sealed lunch bag Ruth had bullied the guard into buying. Arlo met me outside the elevator like he had been waiting to enjoy my failure. "You are not on the visitor list," he said. I lifted the lunch bag. "I'm on the delivery log. This floor does not accept outside deliveries." "Then your lobby guard accepted a bribe badly." His face went flat. "You bribed Ashford security?" "No. I tipped a delivery driver $20 to let me carry a bag that was already cleared. Your system is dramatic, not complicated." The elevator opened behind him. Victoria stood inside, black suit, colder eyes, and no visible patience. "Arlo, why is there a delivery argument outside my office?" Arlo pointed at me. "Because your grandmother's temporary caretaker thinks trespassing is clever." "It worked," I said. Victoria looked at the lunch bag. "Did Ruth send that?" "She said you forget to eat when you're angry." Her hand stopped halfway to the elevator button. Victoria did not soften. The lunch bag had simply reached a place insults could not. Then she stepped aside. 5 minutes. Arlo looked personally betrayed. Inside her office, the city spread beneath glass walls and polished steel. Ashford Group did not decorate wealth. It weaponized it. Every chair looked like it cost more than a semester of tuition. Every silent assistant outside the glass moved as if Victoria's mood could affect the stock market. I placed the lunch bag on her desk. Victoria did not touch it. "What do you want?" "Beware. You came in a costume for answers?" "I came in a costume because your assistant thinks doors are personality traits." Arlo, standing behind me, said, "I heard that. I aimed it at you." Victoria opened the lunch bag. Ruth had sent soup, crackers, and a note written in shaky block letters. "Be nice to my husband." Victoria folded the note once, very slowly. "Ruth has memory gaps," she said. "She attaches to familiar ideas. That does not make her claims true." "Then why did she know the word husband before I showed her the certificate?" Victoria's eyes lifted. I saw the question land. She hated that it landed. "I am investigating the county record," she said. "So am I." "You will stop." "No." Arlo stepped forward. "Mr. Pierce." I turned. "You know, for a man whose job is controlling access, you spend a lot of time being surprised when people get in." Victoria's mouth almost moved. Almost. The elevator doors opened behind me before the almost could become anything. Isabel stepped out holding a slim folder and wearing the same careful smile she had worn at the Pierce house. She looked at my delivery jacket, then at Victoria's office behind me, and her smile sharpened with a private kind of anger. "Aunt Victoria," Isabel said sweetly, I did not know you were taking deliveries personally. Victoria's face closed. Isabel, not now. Isabel ignored the warning and turned to me. Nolan, if you needed money, you could have asked me instead of stalking my aunt. I did ask you for honesty once, I said. You chose Preston. I learned. Her eyes flickered. Then she stepped close enough that Arlo looked between us and finally found a problem he did not understand. Preston is my fiancé, Isabel said, low enough to pretend it was private and loud enough for Victoria to hear. He is the public choice. But you always were stubborn. $50,000 a month, Nolan. Quiet apartment, no fake wife, no little county stunts. I can keep you comfortable if you stop embarrassing me. The old version of me might have bled from that. The version standing in a stolen delivery jacket only laughed. Keep Preston, I said. He matches your budget. Isabel's face flushed. Victoria heard every word. She did not rescue me. She did not defend me. But her eyes moved once from Isabel to me, and the calculation in them changed shape. Then her phone vibrated. She read the screen, and the almost disappeared. What is it? I asked. Ruth's guard says she is calm, Victoria said. Too calm. By the time we reached East Row Apartments, Ruth was still on my couch, but the guard was standing in my kitchen doorway looking terrified. I did not touch anything, he said before Victoria could ask. Ruth slept through all of us. Victoria crossed the room with a speed she tried to hide. She crouched beside the couch. Her hand hovered over Ruth's shoulder, then settled lightly on the blanket. No command, no threat. Just a granddaughter checking breath. Ruth sighed in her sleep and leaned into the touch. Victoria looked around my apartment then. The cracked counter, the chipped mug by Ruth's hand, the folded coat, the eggshells in a bowl, the little towel I had warmed for Ruth's hands, because she kept complaining that Ashford air was too cold even when she was nowhere near it. Her gaze stopped on the towel. What did you give her? Victoria asked. A blanket. Eggs. The right to insult my kitchen. Arlo checked the windows. This could still be manipulation. Ruth opened one eye. Arlo, if you accuse my grandson-in-law again, I will make you eat soup without salt. He shut his mouth. Victoria looked down at Ruth. Come home. Ruth clutched the blanket. Only if he comes. No. Ruth. I should not have enjoyed watching the most feared woman in Havenport lose a staring contest to a half-asleep grandmother. I enjoyed it anyway. Then Ruth sat up too fast. Her face changed. The color drained from her lips. One hand went to her chest, the other fumbling at the coat pocket. I grabbed the coat and found the small orange bottle inside. Empty. Victoria's voice went sharp. Where is her backup medication? Ruth blinked at the bottle. At home. Arlo was already calling the guard downstairs. Victoria reached for Ruth, but Ruth pushed her hand away and grabbed my sleeve. He knows the way, Ruth whispered. I do not know the way, I said. She pointed to the medical card tucked behind the bottle. Ashford Ridge Estates. The address she had whispered in her sleep. Victoria stood. Arlo, bring the car around. Her phone rang before Arlo moved. She looked at the screen and went still in a way that made the room colder. Go. She looked at me. You have a crisis somewhere expensive, I said. I have her address and your money. If she needs the medication now, arguing is slower. Arlo said, absolutely not. Ruth's grip tightened until her knuckles shook. Victoria looked from Ruth's hand to my face. The bruise from Marla's slap had darkened overnight. Preston's blood had washed off my knuckles, but the swelling remained. Arlo said. He already slipped through Ashford Group security once today. And you survived, I said. Ruth tugged my sleeve. Stop flirting with the watchdog. I need my pills. Arlo looked personally wounded. One car, Victoria said to Arlo. 2 guards. He does not leave your sight. Then she looked at me. If you turn this into a stunt... I know, I said. You will ruin me. I will start with your bones. Good. New material. She did not smile, but she handed me Ruth's coat. We should have made it cleanly. Nothing involving my life stayed clean that long. Halfway down, Ruth refused the elevator because a neighbor's cat slipped through the hallway. She froze so hard the guards panicked. I had to carry her down the stairs while she muttered that Victoria hated cats too, and that I should remember that, because husbands who forgot small fears became lonely men. I filed that away because it was the first clue about Victoria that sounded like a girl instead of a boardroom. By the time we reached the street, the Ashford car had been forced around the block by a delivery truck. Ruth was pale, sweating, and stubbornly pointing toward the road. I know the gate, she whispered. Go. So I carried her. The guards followed, arguing into their phones. Arlo shouted through mine. Victoria's black car was coming from the opposite direction, but the estate was closer than the car. At the Ashford Ridge gate, iron rose higher than the Pierce house roof. Cameras watched the road. 2 guards stepped out of the booth and hesitated when they saw me carrying an old woman in slippers and an expensive coat. Medication, I said. She lives here. One guard reached for his radio. A familiar voice cut in before he could speak. Well, that is pathetic. Isabel Ashford stood near a silver car with Preston beside her. Marla had come too, dressed for a social visit and wearing the expression she used when she wanted servants to feel poor. Preston's lip was swollen from my fist. Seeing it improved my morning. Isabel's eyes moved from Ruth in my arms to my delivery delivery jacket. Nolan, tell me you did not follow my aunt all the way to her family gate. I do not have time for you. That made her smile sharpen. You always say that when you want me to chase. Marla stepped closer and looked at Ruth. Who is this old woman? Ruth's head rested against my shoulder. Her breathing had turned shallow. She needs her medication, I said to the gate guard. Call inside. Preston moved between me and the booth. Wait, he said to the guard. This man caused trouble at our house yesterday and assaulted me at Havenport University. He is not here for medicine. He is here to create another scene. Marla pointed at Ruth. He probably dragged some confused old woman here to fake a connection. Look at him. Delivery jacket, poor apartment smell, county lies. This is what he does. The guard's hand paused over the radio. That pause was dangerous. I shifted Ruth higher in my arms. Move, Preston. Preston lowered his voice. Apologize to mother first. Ruth made a small sound. The empty bottle rattled in my pocket. I stepped forward. Preston shoved my shoulder. Not hard enough to knock Ruth down. Hard enough to prove he would if I kept moving. Something in me went quiet. I hooked my foot behind Preston's ankle and drove my shoulder into his chest. He hit the curb on his back with a sound that made Isabel gasp for a useful reason. His status dropped with his body. Marla screamed, Nolan! Twofold was yesterday, I said. Today I'm in a hurry. I turned back to the guard. Radio inside now. Isabel blocked him next, not with her body, with her name. I am Isabel Ashford, she said to the guard. My parents are expected inside, and Preston is my fiancé. Do not open that gate for Nolan Pierce. He is trying to use my family. The guard looked trapped between a bleeding old woman and a woman with the right last name. Marla saw the hesitation and got uglier. You hear, Miss Ashford? Marla snapped. Throw him out before his con artist grandmother dies on your pavement. Ruth's eyes opened. For 1 second, they were clear. Con artist? She whispered. I looked down. Save your strength. She tried to lift her head toward Marla, but the effort cost her. Her fingers dug into my jacket. The bottle in my pocket rattled again. Then the road behind us filled with black cars. Every guard at the gate straightened. Isabel turned, irritation already forming because she thought authority had arrived to support her. Victoria stepped out of the first car before it fully stopped. Arlo came out behind her, face white. Victoria saw Ruth in my arms. She saw Preston on the curb. She saw Marla blocking the gate and Isabel standing in front of the guard booth with borrowed authority all over her face. Then Victoria looked at me. For once, she did not accuse me first. She walked straight to Ruth and touched her grandmother's cheek. Ruth, Victoria said, and her voice cracked just enough for everyone at the gate to hear it. Ruth smiled faintly. I brought him home. Victoria's eyes lifted to Marla. The gate area went silent, without anyone needing to gasp. Who? Victoria asked. Kept my grandmother outside without her medication? Preston tried to stand. Ms. Ashford? Nolan? Victoria did not look at him. I did not ask you. Marla's face lost color. Isabel's mouth opened, then closed, because the title grandmother had finally reached her. I held Ruth while Victoria took the empty bottle from my pocket and handed it to Arlo. Open the gate, Victoria said. The gates began to move. Then she added, clear enough for every guard, every Pierce, and Isabel to hear. Nolan comes in with me. Isabel stepped forward. Aunt Victoria, you cannot seriously. Victoria turned on her. Stay outside until I ask why you were performing authority while my grandmother was in his arms. Isabel froze. Preston stood crookedly beside her, still brushing dirt from the suit he had worn to impress the Ashford family. Marla looked from Ruth to Victoria to me. This time, she had insulted someone in front of a higher power she could not bully. The gates opened wide. I carried Ruth through. Behind me, Isabel, Preston, and Marla remained outside, still dressed for superiority, while the woman they had tried to impress turned the gate into an indictment. The Ashford gate opened for me before it opened for Isabel. That was the part she could not swallow. I carried Ruth Ashford across the stone drive with Victoria beside me, Arlo behind me, and every guard at Ashford Ridge Estate suddenly pretending they had never hesitated. Ruth's fingers stayed hooked in my jacket. Her breathing was still thin, but her eyes were open. Behind us, Isabel snapped at the nearest guard. You know who I am. Let me through. The guard looked at Victoria first. That tiny glance ruined Isabel's whole performance. Victoria did not even turn around. No one enters until Ruth has her medication. Preston tried to follow anyway. His suit had dust on the back from the curb, and one side of his mouth was still swollen from the university office. He looked less like an heir and more like a man who had been introduced to pavement twice in 2 days. Marla grabbed his sleeve. This is outrageous! We were invited! I shifted Ruth higher in my arms. Then wait like guests. Marla's eyes cut toward me. Do not speak to me from inside someone else's gate. Ruth lifted her head. Her voice came out weak but sharp enough to make the guard flinch. He is carrying me, she said. You are blocking air. Marla went pale. Victoria held out one hand, and Arlo placed the empty medication bottle in her palm. She looked at the label, then at the people outside the gate. "Arlo," she said, "make sure every camera angle from the gate is preserved." Preston's face changed. Not because cameras were evidence, because cameras meant he could not turn the story into his usual gentle misunderstanding. Inside the estate, the front doors opened before we reached the steps. An estate steward stood there in a black suit, older than the guards and much less impressed by panic. "Mrs. Ashford's room is ready," he told Victoria. "Not her room," Ruth muttered. "Sitting room." Victoria bent toward her. "Ruth, you need to rest. I need witnesses." No one argued after that. Isabel tried to walk in behind me. The estate steward lifted one hand. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough. She stopped like she had hit a velvet rope. "Excuse me?" Isabel said. The steward looked at Victoria, then at Ruth, then finally at Isabel. "Family guests will wait in the West Hall until called." "I am family. So is Mrs. Ashford," he said. "She was outside your gate order." The West Hall was visible from the entry. It had chairs, flowers, and enough distance from the sitting room to make important people feel less important. Preston saw it and smiled tightly, trying to look gracious about being parked like luggage. I walked past him with Ruth in my arms. His eyes followed me. That was the second reversal of the morning, not the gate opening, not the steward blocking Isabel. It was the fact that Preston, who had spent years making me wait outside rooms, now had to watch me enter one while he stayed behind. I looked over my shoulder. "West Hall has chairs." His jaw flexed. Ruth whispered, "Do not tease injured people. Sorry, tease them after tea." They gave Ruth the pill with water in a sitting room big enough to make the Pierce house look like a rental lobby. I stood near the sofa with my sleeve still wrinkled from carrying her. Victoria stayed at Ruth's side. Arlo stood by the door with his tablet, watching me like I might steal the carpet. Ruth closed her eyes for one long minute. When she opened them again, the softness was gone. The old woman who had slept on my couch and insulted my eggs was still there, but something formal had returned behind her eyes, something heavy enough to make the room sit straighter. "Bring them in," Ruth said. Victoria looked at her. "Are you sure?" Ruth's hand moved toward mine and squeezed once. "They called me his con artist grandmother." Victoria's face went still. Arlo opened the doors. Isabel entered first because of course she did. Preston followed with one hand near his ribs. Marla came behind them, lips pressed thin. Arthur Ashford and Camille Ashford were already in the room when the doors opened from the opposite side. Camille wore diamonds in daylight. Arthur held a leather folder with the Ashford trust seal on it. So that was the visit. Not concern, not family. They had come for Preston and Isabel's engagement gift. Camille saw Ruth upright on the sofa and smiled too quickly. "Mother, thank God!" We were terrified when the guard said there was confusion at the gate. Ruth looked at her. "You were terrified the trust meeting would be delayed." Camille's smile died halfway. Arthur cleared his throat. "This is not the moment." "Then why are you holding the trust folder?" Ruth asked. The folder lowered an inch. I almost respected her aim. She had been half-conscious 10 minutes earlier, and she still hit the richest target in the room first. Preston stepped forward with the bruised patience of a man trying to look noble while his cheekbone was swelling. "Mrs. Ashford," he said, "I am relieved you are safe. Nolan created chaos outside, but I tried to prevent him from using your condition." Victoria looked at him. "By standing between my grandmother and her medication? I did not know who she was." "That is not a defense," Victoria said. "That is the whole problem." Marla could not help herself. She pointed at me. "He was carrying a sick old woman in a delivery jacket. What were we supposed to think?" Ruth reached for the teacup on the table. I thought she wanted to drink. She tipped the tea onto the saucer, set the cup down, then flicked 2 drops from her fingers onto Marla's perfect sleeve. Marla jerked back like the tea had been acid. Ruth smiled. "Now you look properly offended. Continue." No one breathed for 3 seconds. The old madam of the Ashford family had just stained Marla Pierce in the Ashford sitting room, and every person there knew Marla could not wipe it off without admitting she had been marked. Marla's mouth opened. Richard would have told her to be quiet if he had been there. Richard was not there, so Preston did it for him. "Mother," he whispered. Ruth looked at Preston. "Mother, you use that word loudly." His expression stiffened. "You let that woman slap Nolan at Havenport University," Ruth said. "Then today you blocked him while he carried me. Tell me, Preston Pierce, when exactly does your kindness begin?" Preston's polished face cracked. "Nolan assaulted me." "Twice," I said. "Keep the record accurate." Arlo made a small choking sound near the door. Victoria did not look amused, but one corner of her mouth almost betrayed her. Isabel recovered before Preston did. "Grandmother, Nolan is twisting this. He has always been obsessed with me. He came to the gate because he knew Preston and I would be there." Ruth turned to her. The word grandmother had sounded natural in Isabel's mouth until Ruth heard it. Then it became borrowed jewelry. You stood at my gate, Ruth said, used my name, and ordered my guard to ban the man carrying me. Isabel's color rose. I did not know it was you. You did not need to know it was me. You needed to know it was a person who could not breathe. Camille stepped in, smoother than her daughter. Mother! Isabel made a mistake under stress. Preston's family was also confused. We should not let an illegitimate Pierce boy turn this into a family fracture. There it was, the old label, imported into a room where it finally had no authority. Ruth's hand tightened around mine. Victoria looked at Camille. Do not call him that here. Camille blinked. Victoria, surely you are not defending him. I am defending the fact that my grandmother is alive because he carried her while your daughter performed gate authority. Arthur's jaw tightened. Victoria, she turned to him. Say my name again like a warning and I will make this conversation about your department budget. Arthur shut his mouth. That was the Ashford difference. At Pierce House, people shouted until someone weak or bent. In Victoria's world, one sentence could cost a man a floor of employees. Ruth lifted the trust folder from Arthur's hand. He let her take it. Of course he did. She opened it on her lap. Inside was a cream envelope, embossed, heavy, and clearly prepared before anyone expected blood pressure, gate cameras, or me. The original engagement welcome included 2 Ashford Trust share allotments, Ruth said. Preston's eyes lit before he could hide it. That tiny greed did more damage than any accusation. Ruth saw it too. She closed the folder. No, Camille leaned forward. Mother, the allotments were already discussed. Discussed, Ruth said, not given. Preston swallowed. Mrs. Ashford, if I offended you, I apologize. Ruth tilted her head. That is interesting. You did not apologize when you thought I was only an old woman on the pavement. He had no answer. Ruth pulled a smaller envelope from the side table. For Isabel's engagement, the Ashford family will provide a courtesy check of $180,000. Camille's face went hard. Arthur looked at the folder like someone had cut a vein in it. Preston stared at the envelope. The room understood the difference before anyone explained it. Trust shares meant entry. A courtesy check meant charity with a ribbon. Ruth held the small envelope out. No one took it. I looked at Preston. You should take it. You always liked money you did not earn. His eyes snapped to me. Marla stepped forward. Nolan. The way she said my name almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because I knew the tone. That was the voice Marla used when she wanted me to crawl under the table and clean up a mess Preston had made. The furniture was expensive. The witnesses were Ashford. Her command still reached for the same old handle. Fix this, she hissed. Preston's eyes flickered toward the trust folder. There it was. They did not want me gone yet. Not while Ruth's hand still held mine. Not while my voice might reach the old madam who had just cut their prize in half and then kept cutting. Marla swallowed her rage and forced softness onto her face. It looked painful. Nolan, she said, louder this time, so Ruth could hear. If you care about family at all, tell Mrs. Ashford Preston never meant harm. Tell her he was trying to protect her. Preston looked at me like we had both returned to a familiar stage. He expected the old Nolan to understand the assignment. Apologize for him, bleed for him, sell my own bruise so his future could stay pretty. I looked at Ruth. Preston did not protect you. Marla's face twitched. I pointed at the envelope. That check is too generous. Ruth's eyes brightened. Preston's mouth opened. You ungrateful! Marla started. Victoria moved faster than Marla expected. One hand lifted, 2 guards stepped in, and Marla stopped as if she had hit glass. Ruth nodded toward the window. Beyond it, the old Ashford family chapel stood across the courtyard, white stone under black trees. Preston Pierce will kneel outside the chapel, Ruth said. Preston stared at her. What? Ruth's voice did not rise. Until sunrise. Isabel recoiled. Grandmother, that is humiliating. Yes, Ruth said. I chose the punishment carefully. Preston looked at Victoria, then Arthur, then Camille, hunting for someone whose greed outranked Ruth's anger. No one moved. Marla finally lost control. My son will not kneel like a criminal while that thing is treated as a guest. The guards shifted toward her again. I stepped before they could. Careful. You hit me, he pays twice. You insult Ruth, apparently he kneels. Preston's face twisted. Victoria looked at the estate steward. Escort Preston Pierce to the chapel courtyard. Aunt Victoria, Isabel said, voice shaking with rage. If you do this, people will talk. Victoria's gaze cut to her. Good. Then maybe they will ask why he was there. The steward walked to Preston. He did not grab him. He did not need to. He only opened the sitting room door and waited with the calm of a man who knew the estate obeyed Ruth before it obeyed anyone's pride. Preston walked out. Marla followed 2 steps, but Victoria stopped her. You may watch from the covered hall, Victoria said. You may not comfort him. Marla looked like she wanted to spit. She swallowed it because the Ashford floor cost too much. Isabel stayed behind, shaking. Her eyes found me with a hatred that had too much possession inside it to be simple disgust. "You enjoy this," she said. "A little," I said. Ruth patted my hand. "Honesty is healthy," Arlo muttered. "Questionable medical advice." Ruth heard him. "You can kneel too if you miss him." Arlo went silent. Since the county clerk had looked at me like a criminal, every room had tried to put me back in place. This one failed. Marla could not order me out. Preston could not polish his way through it. Isabel could not make her last name open every door. And Victoria Ashford, the woman who kept saying she was not my wife, had just made her estate treat me like someone worth admitting. Ruth turned to the steward. "Prepare the East guest suite for Nolan." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Ruth! He carried me," Ruth said. "He stays." Arlo spoke carefully. "There are security concerns." Ruth pointed at the chapel window. "There is your security concern. It is kneeling. I should have refused the suite." Then I saw Preston through the glass, lowering himself onto the cold stone in front of the chapel, while Marla stood under the covered hall with both hands clenched uselessly at her sides. I said, "East suite sounds fine." Victoria looked at me. "For Ruth," I added. "Of course," she said. Neither of us sounded convinced. That night, the estate gave me a room larger than my entire apartment. A clean shirt waited folded on the bed. Arlo had a guard posted outside my door and another at the stairway because hospitality apparently tasted better with surveillance. Near midnight, I opened the curtain. Preston was still kneeling in the chapel courtyard. His expensive suit had lost its shape. Isabel stood 10 feet away arguing with Camille in sharp whispers. Marla kept looking up at my window, and every time she did, I lifted the glass of water from my nightstand like a toast. Petty? Absolutely. Some wounds deserved proper manners. At 2 in the morning, Arlo slid a guest conduct sheet under my door. No unsupervised movement, no access to family offices, no contact with Ruth without staff present. I wrote one line at the bottom and slid it back. "Tell Ruth." 5 minutes later, the paper disappeared. No replacement came. At dawn, the estate smelled like coffee, polished wood, and revenge cooling on stone. Preston was gone from the courtyard, but the wet imprint of his knees remained on the chapel step. Ashford's servants walked around it without looking down. That was worse than staring. I came downstairs expecting Arlo, a guard, or Victoria's newest threat. Instead, Ruth sat at the breakfast table in a pale blue shawl with 2 old leather marriage books placed in front of her. Victoria stood at the far end of the table, perfectly dressed, perfectly still. The books had the Stonebridge County seal stamped into the covers. My name was written on a ribbon tag across one. Victoria's was written across the other. Ruth tapped the books with one thin finger. "Now," she said, looking from Victoria to me, "why is my granddaughter pretending not to know her husband?" Marriage books did not look fake. That was the first problem. They looked old enough to have been handled, protected, and hidden by someone who expected the future to need them. The leather had softened at the corners. The Stonebridge County seal was pressed into both covers. My name sat on one ribbon tag. Victoria's sat on the other. Victoria did not touch them. I did. Arlo made a sound behind me. "Relax," I said. "If paper could bite, the county clerk would have lost a finger already." Victoria's eyes stayed on Ruth. "Where did you get these?" Ruth poured cream into her coffee like this was a polite breakfast and not the collapse of 2 lives. "From a place people put important things when younger people are too proud to remember them." "That is not an answer," Victoria said. "It is the answer you earned." I opened the first book. Inside was a certified copy of the marriage record. My photo, Victoria's photo, our names beside each other. The same impossible date, the same clean county seal. The room did not spin. It should have. Instead, my mind became very still, because stillness was the only way not to let panic make me stupid. "I do not remember signing anything," I said. Victoria looked at me. "Neither do I." Ruth looked offended. "Then both of you should eat more fish." Arlo stepped forward. "Mrs. Ashford, these could have been planted." Ruth turned her head slowly. "Arlo, if you accuse my breakfast table of fraud, I will replace you with a doorbell." He stepped back. The second book had a copy of a sworn declaration. No long explanation, no helpful answer. Just 2 signatures and a legal line that made the marriage harder to laugh away. Victoria finally touched the page. Only with 2 fingers, like she was touching a knife by the blade. "Stonebridge County Clerk's Office," she said. "Now." Ruth smiled. "Good. Field trip." "No," Victoria and I said at the same time. We looked at each other. Ruth clapped once. "See, married." Victoria's stare could have frostbitten a wall. "Ruth, you are not going!" Ruth picked up my phone from beside my plate before I could stop her. Her fingers moved with surprising speed for a woman who had nearly collapsed the day before. My phone buzzed back into my hand a second later. She had added herself to my contacts. "Very fragile grandmother. Then she called herself from my phone, let her own phone ring in her pocket, and looked at Victoria with the smug calm of a criminal mastermind in a shawl. "If you leave me," Ruth said, "I will be upset. Everyone here knows I am very fragile." Arlo whispered, "That is extortion." Ruth nodded. "Marriage is family business. Extortion keeps family efficient." Victoria closed her eyes for one dangerous second. That was how I ended up in the back of an Ashford car between a legal wife who denied being my wife and a grandmother who had named herself a medical threat in my contacts. Arlo sat in the front passenger seat, issuing quiet instructions into his phone. Victoria stared out the window. Ruth held the marriage books on her lap like trophies. "I texted Jules Knox from my coat pocket. If anything happens to me today, preserve Bright Arc separation documents." Quietly, Jules replied. "Is this about the wife?" I looked at Victoria's reflection in the car window. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, absolutely not." Jules sent one more line. "That sentence is how lawsuits are born." At Stonebridge County Clerk's office, the same clerk from the first morning saw me and lost all the color in her face. Good. Growth mattered. She looked from me to Victoria to Ruth to Arlo, then down at the marriage books. "Mr. Pierce," she said, much quieter than last time. "You remember me?" I said. "I remember the record." Victoria placed one book on the counter. "Confirm it." The clerk swallowed. "Ms. Ashford, we already pulled the file after your office called. The record is active." Arlo leaned in. "Active does not mean valid. The license number is valid," the clerk said. "The filing was accepted, scanned, and archived. The copy in Mrs. Ashford's book matches the county file." Victoria's jaw tightened. I kept my voice even. "Could someone have filed it without us?" The clerk looked at the two of us, then at Ruth, who was suddenly studying the ceiling like an innocent witness in a cheap play. "I cannot explain memory," the clerk said. "I can confirm the record." That was all the procedure we needed. One sentence, no ceremony, no miracle, no convenient answer, just the county office turning a joke into a wall. Arlo did not accept walls unless Victoria built them. "If this is fraud," he said to the clerk, "Ashford Group will expect names." The clerk's eyes flicked to Victoria. Victoria did not rescue her from the sentence. "Later." That one word saved the room from becoming a file hunt. Later meant the county could panic after we left. Later meant Arlo could sharpen his teeth somewhere. I did not have to listen. Later meant the only thing that mattered in that moment was the living consequence of the record. Me, Victoria, Ruth holding both marriage books like she had won a court case without entering one. "So," I said, "the county says I am married." "The county is correct," the clerk said. I looked at Victoria. "Congratulations." "Do not," she said. "Fair. Condolences." Ruth smiled again. Victoria did not. Ruth tapped the marriage books. "Ask the better question." I looked at her. "Why don't we remember?" For one moment, her smile slipped. Not enough to become an answer. Enough to become a clue. Then she patted the books and said, "Some promises wait until people stop running." Victoria's voice sharpened. "Ruth." Ruth looked innocent again, too innocent. The clerk lowered her eyes, and even Arlo stopped breathing down her neck. No one in that office laughed after that. Ruth smiled at me. "There, you are official." Victoria turned to me. "Divorce." "Immediately," I said. The clerk froze. Ruth's smile vanished. Victoria heard the silence but pushed through it. "My attorney will draft terms. You take nothing from Ashford Group, Ruth's trust, or my personal assets." "My attorney will send the same demand," I said. "You take nothing from my company, my patents, or anything I built before the county decided to play matchmaker." Arlo turned around so fast his seatbelt snapped against his shoulder. "Your what?" Victoria's eyes sharpened. I smiled at her. "You are not the only person in Havenport with assets worth protecting." My phone vibrated in my pocket before she could answer. "Jules, Bright Arc pre-listing packet is insulated, but spouse language could complicate timing. Say nothing public." I deleted the notification from the lock screen. Victoria noticed the movement. Of course she did. "Who are you texting?" she asked. "A man who worries professionally." "About your patents?" "About bad weather." Arlo leaned closer. "It is sunny. Then he is very good at advance work." Victoria's eyes stayed on my face. She did not know what Bright Arc meant yet. She only knew I had something large enough to protect and enough nerve to protect it from her. That bothered her. Good. It was a stupid line to say in front of Ruth. I knew that the second her hand tightened around the marriage books. "Divorce?" Ruth whispered. Victoria's face changed first. "Not much, just enough, Ruth," she said. Ruth tried to stand. Her knees gave out. I caught her before her shoulder hit the counter. The clerk screamed for help. Arlo was already calling the car. Victoria dropped beside me, one hand under Ruth's head, the other gripping her wrist. Ruth's eyes fluttered open for half a second. She looked at me. "Not Victoria. Don't leave her," she whispered. Then her hand went limp. The next 20 minutes became black cars, white lights, and Victoria Ashford losing one layer of control at a time. At Havenport Memorial Hospital, the VIP ward opened before we reached the doors. No paperwork touched Victoria's hands. No nurse asked Ruth to wait. Power moved around her like traffic parting for an ambulance. But power did not make Ruth wake faster. Victoria stood beside the hospital bed with both hands folded so tightly her knuckles looked pale. Arlo stayed near the glass wall, silent for once. I stood on the other side with Ruth's contact name still glowing on my phone. Very fragile grandmother. The joke had stopped being funny. A doctor came out of the room after the first check. Victoria looked at him once, and he compressed the entire medical lecture into the only thing that mattered. No stress, he said. No emotional shocks. If she believes the marriage is protecting her, do not tear that away today. Victoria's face went colder because fear had nowhere else to go. She turned to me. You heard him. I heard him. Then say it when she wakes. Say what? Her voice dropped. That divorce is not happening. I looked through the glass at Ruth, small under the hospital blanket, the same woman who had pressed a warm egg to my bruised cheek like my pain was her business. I had wanted freedom for so long that I had tried to hire a stranger to fake it. Now freedom was standing on the other side of a hospital door, and the price was an old woman's heart. Ruth woke near sunset. Victoria reached her first. Ruth's eyes moved past her and found me. You won't divorce? Victoria looked at me. Arlo looked at me. The whole ward waited like my lie had become medicine. I stepped closer to the bed. No divorce. Ruth stared at me. I added the only honest piece I could afford. Not while it hurts you. Her breathing eased. Victoria's shoulders lowered by a fraction. She did not thank me. She did not need to. The relief showed before she could bury it. Ruth studied my face as if she knew I had given her the truth with a hook hidden inside. Not while, she repeated. I said nothing. She poked my wrist with one finger. Weak, but accusing. You argue like a lawyer, she said. I dislike lawyers. Me too. Then do better. That landed harder than it should have. Because Ruth was not asking for romance. She was asking me not to turn her fear into a loophole. The woman had known me for days, maybe years, in whatever broken hallway her memory kept opening, and somehow she had already found the cheapest part of my answer. I took the hit. No divorce, I said again. No loophole tonight. Ruth's hand relaxed. Ruth turned her head toward Victoria. You too. Victoria took longer. Too long. Ruth's fingers twitched against the blanket. Victoria leaned down and said, No divorce. Ruth did not blink. No loophole, she whispered. Victoria's eyes moved to me for half a second. I lifted both hands. Do not look at me. I already got caught. Ruth waited. Victoria's throat moved once. No loophole tonight. Ruth frowned. Victoria exhaled through her nose. No loophole while it hurts you? That was not a love confession. It was not even trust. But it was the first time Victoria Ashford let an old woman force her cold logic into the same cage as mine. Ruth looked satisfied enough to keep living out of spite. Ruth smiled, exhausted and victorious. Good, now feed him. He gets thin when women scare him. Arlo coughed into his fist. I looked at Victoria. For the record, I am scared by paperwork too. You should be, she said. You are about to sign employment forms. I blinked. I'm sorry? Victoria straightened. The fear disappeared behind command so fast I almost admired the craftsmanship. Ruth cannot be upset, she said. Ruth trusts you. Ruth also refuses to believe you are not part of this family. If you return to East Row Apartments and vanish into your own life, she will chase the idea until it hurts her. So your solution is kidnapping with benefits? My solution is supervision. Ruth lifted one finger from the blanket. And lunch. Victoria ignored that. Ruth lifted the finger higher. Victoria's jaw tightened. And lunch. And he sends pictures. Ruth. Very fragile, Ruth reminded her. Arlo looked at the ceiling like he was asking it to intervene. The ceiling, unlike me, had the good sense to stay out of Ashford marriages. Arlo's mood recovered the moment supervision appeared. Ashford Group Research Division, temporary consultant badge, restricted access, direct monitoring. I looked at him. You rehearsed that with joy. Yes, Arlo said. Victoria ignored us. You will report tomorrow morning. You will answer Arlo's calls. You will stay close enough that Ruth can see you at lunch if needed. And if I refuse? Ruth opened one eye. Then I will be upset. I looked at the ceiling. No, God answered. Coward. Victoria handed me a visitor badge from Arlo's tablet case. It had already been printed. My photo from the clerk record stared back at me with the expression of a man who had made poor administrative choices. You printed this before asking, I said. I did ask, Victoria said. You just wasted time answering. Ruth patted the blanket. A tiny cream-colored dog popped his head from the basket beside her bed. I stared at it. Why is there a dog in the VIP ward? Ruth lifted the dog with both hands and placed him in my arms. His name is Mr. Whiskers. The dog licked my thumb. Arlo looked personally defeated. It is a dog. Yes, Ruth said. That is why the name is funny. Victoria's face tightened strangely at the word whiskers. I saw it. So did Ruth. Ruth smiled like she had just moved another piece on the board. Victoria has always been silly about cats. Victoria turned toward the door. This conversation is over. I looked down at the dog in my arms, then at the badge in my hand. That morning, I had gone to confirm whether I was married. By night, divorce was forbidden. My legal wife had put me on her payroll, her assistant had assigned himself as my jailer, and Ruth Ashford had armed me with a dog named Mr. Whiskers. The badge was still warm from the printer. The dog was warmer. Arlo pointed at both like they were equally suspicious. Tomorrow, he said, do not be late. Mr. Whiskers sneezed on him. For once, I had no notes. Ashford Group gave me a restricted badge, a temporary desk, and a dog with a cat name. Arlo Finch treated all three like security threats. He met me in the lobby the next morning with 2 guards, a tablet, and the exhausted face of a man whose life had been ruined by grandmothers with opinions. Mr. Pierce, he said, you are here as a temporary consultant. You are not family. You are not executive staff. You are not allowed on the top floor without escort. Mr. Whiskers sneezed from the carrier in my hand. I looked down at him. He disagrees. The dog has no clearance. He has Ruth. Arlo's tablet buzzed. He read the message and looked like the building had betrayed him. Mrs. Ashford says Mr. Whiskers has lunch privileges. Smart woman. She also says you must send her a photo before noon. My phone buzzed too. Very fragile grandmother. Make him smile. Victoria forgets smiling is legal. I held up the dog and took a picture. Mr. Whiskers looked pleased. Arlo looked miserable in the corner. I sent it. Ruth replied with 12 heart symbols and 1 warning. Do not let Victoria pretend she dislikes him. She only dislikes cats. I looked at the dog. Congratulations, I told him. You are a weaponized childhood clue. Arlo narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? It means your security briefing is missing whisker sensitivity. Do not say whisker sensitivity in this lobby. The elevator opened before I could answer. Victoria stood inside. Black suit, clean watch, expression sharp enough to cut the leash. Her eyes moved from my badge to the carrier. Mr. Whiskers barked once. Victoria's shoulders did not move, but her hand paused near the elevator button. Small reaction. Real reaction. Ruth had been right. You brought the dog, Victoria said. Your grandmother issued a hostage demand. She calls it lunch. Same tone. Victoria looked at the dog again. Keep him away from my office. Why? He's not a cat. Her eyes lifted to mine. Arlo suddenly found the elevator wall fascinating. I smiled. Interesting. Dangerous word, Victoria said. So is husband. We both survived. The elevator doors closed with all 4 of us inside. Victoria, Arlo, me, and the smallest approved scandal in Ashford Group. My research division desk sat on a floor where people whispered with expensive posture. Half the staff watched me arrive with the dog carrier. The other half pretended not to watch, which was less efficient and more obvious. The badge turned red at the first secure door. Arlo looked delighted. Then the scanner flashed green. Victoria had already overridden it. Arlo's delight died young. Temporary access, Victoria said. Of course, he replied, in the voice of a man adding locks in his head. The research floor was not a dusty archive. It was glass rooms, locked screens, quiet engineers, and documents that made people nervous when I glanced too long. Good. Nervous people revealed more than confident people. One analyst near the conference table was arguing with a manager over a Solace 9 compatibility memo. I should have kept walking. I should have remembered that I was supposed to look like a stray husband with a temporary badge. Then I saw the line on the screen. That assumption is backward, I said. The manager turned. Excuse me? Arlo inhaled like I had touched a tripwire. I nodded at the screen. You are treating the delay as a supply issue. It is a licensing risk. If you send that memo upstairs, Arthur will use it to say Victoria let Brightark box Ashford Group out. The manager looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at the memo, then at me. No praise, no thanks. Just calculation. Change the line, she told the manager. The manager did. Arlo stepped closer to me. How did you know that? I can read. So can most people. Not that line, apparently. Victoria's gaze stayed on me 1 second longer than necessary. Then she looked away first. That was not softness, but it was no longer simple suspicion either. She picked up the corrected memo and handed it back to the manager. Run the revision before Arthur sees the old version, she said. The manager left fast. Arlo waited until the glass door closed. You understand Ashford internal risk language now? I understand men who hide traps in boring sentences. That is not an answer. It is the answer you earned. Victoria looked at me over the folder. Do you always answer questions by making people regret asking? Only when the question is lazy. Arlo's eyebrows rose. Victoria should have cut me down for that. Instead, she slid the memo across the table and tapped one paragraph with her nail. Then tell me what else is lazy. There it was, a test. Not warm, not trusting. Better than both. I read the paragraph once. This line assumes Bright Arc wants delay. Wrong. Delay weakens everybody except the person trying to blame you for it. And who is that? Arlo asked. The person who benefits when Victoria looks careless. Victoria's eyes did not move from mine. Arthur, I shrugged. You said it. Arlo went quiet. That tiny competence proof did more than win me a desk. It made the room ask a new question. If the stray husband could see the trap in one memo, what else had he been pretending not to see? At noon, Ruth demanded proof that we were eating. Victoria tried to refuse. Ruth called my phone. I put her on speaker. Grandson-in-law, Ruth said, show me the lunch. Victoria's eyes sharpened. Ruth, I am in a work day. Then work at chewing. I turned the camera toward the table. Salad for Victoria, sandwich for me. A small bowl of rice chicken for Mr. Whiskers because Ruth had threatened Arlo with emotional distress until he approved it. Ruth inspected the food through the screen. Too green. That is salad, Victoria said. That is a lawn with feelings. I choked on my water. Victoria's mouth almost moved. Almost. Then the door opened without a knock. Isabel walked in carrying a folder and wearing the expression of a woman who expected every room to forgive her before she entered it. She stopped when she saw me at Victoria's lunch table. Then she saw the badge clipped to my jacket. Then the dog carrier. Her eyes turned ugly. Aunt Victoria, Isabel said too sweetly, I did not realize Ashford Group had started hiring emotional support husbands. Victoria closed her laptop. Do you have business here? My parents asked me to bring the engagement revisions. Leave them with Arlo. Isabel did not move. She opened the folder instead. The top page carried the Ashford Trust seal, not the full allotment Ruth had cut. A revised request, cleaner language, softer greed, same hunger in a better font. My parents think yesterday was emotionally charged, Isabel said. Once grandmother calms down, the trust share conversation should return to normal. Victoria's face did not change. Wrong floor. It affects family. So did the gate. Isabel's grip tightened on the folder. Then her eyes slid to me, and the real reason she had refused to leave became obvious. The trust folder was the excuse. I was the itch. Is Nolan reviewing family trust matters now? She asked. Or does the dog vote too? Mr. Whiskers barked once. I looked at him. Abstain! Victoria's mouth almost betrayed her again. Her gaze stayed on me. You look comfortable, Nolan. One day inside the estate, and now you have a badge. It bothers you, I said. It amuses me. Your cheek says otherwise. Her eyes flashed, and for 1 second the slap from the future seemed to arrive early in her imagination. She wanted to make me flinch. She wanted me to prove I was still the man who would take whatever mood she handed down. I picked up my sandwich instead. That irritated her more. It also told Victoria I was done performing pain for Isabel's comfort. 2 days, I said. Try to keep up. Her smile trembled. Victoria saw it. Arlo saw it. I saw it. Isabel had offered to keep me in a quiet apartment when she thought I was beneath her. Now I was sitting at her aunt's table, eating food Ruth had forced on us, with access she did not approve. Replacement did not need romance yet. Sometimes it only needed a chair. Isabel walked to the table and dropped the folder near my plate. Do you even know what floor you're on? The one your date performance did not earn you. Her hand twitched. Mr. Whiskers barked at her from the carrier. Isabel looked down. What is that? A dog. I know it is a dog. Then why ask questions you can answer? Victoria picked up her glass. She did not drink, she watched. Isabel leaned closer, voice low. You think this makes you important? My aunt is watching you because Ruth is confused. Preston and I are still the engagement everyone knows. Your wife, whoever she is a cheap little shield you made up to annoy me. The room sharpened. Victoria's fingers stopped around the glass. I set my sandwich down, slowly. Say that again, I said. Isabel's eyes lit because she thought anger meant she still owned a piece of me. Fine, she said. Bring your wife here. I will scare her off in 5 minutes. I will tell her what you are. Illegitimate, broke, unwanted, and still chasing the woman who chose Preston. Arlo moved toward the door. Isabel, she ignored him and reached for my badge. Maybe I should start with this. Her nails clipped the plastic. I caught her wrist before she could rip it off. Victoria stood. Isabel looked at my hand on her wrist, then at my face. Let go. Do not touch what you cannot afford to lose. You mean the badge? I mean the wife. Her mouth twisted. You really want me to believe you care about her? I released her wrist. She lifted her hand as if she might slap me. I moved first. The slap cracked across her cheek and turned her face toward the glass wall. No one gasped. Ashford employees were too well trained for that. But outside the glass, every keyboard stopped. Isabel pressed one hand to her cheek, stunned in a way no insult could have made her. She had expected me to defend my pride. She had not expected me to defend a woman she had not even bothered to know. I stepped close enough for her to hear without making Victoria guess. "My wife is more beautiful than you," I said, "sharper than you, stronger than you. Her figure is better, her spine is cleaner, and unlike you, she does not need to threaten another woman to feel chosen." Isabel's eyes went wet with rage. "You hit me for her?" "No," I said. "I hit you because you thought my wife was safer to insult than me." Victoria stood by the table still as glass. She had heard enough. Not all of it, maybe. Enough. Her expression did not soften. That would have been too easy. But color touched her face for 1 second before she buried it under command. "Isabel," Victoria said, "leave this floor." Isabel turned on her. "Aunt Victoria, he slapped me." "After you threatened a woman who is not in the room and touched his badge without permission. You are defending him again." Victoria's voice dropped. "I am defending the order of my building. Do not confuse that with permission to test me." Isabel looked from Victoria to me. The hatred was still there. So was something worse for her. Doubt. She had come to make me look like a kept man. Instead, she left with a red handprint, no folder, and every employee on the research floor pretending they had not just watched the Ashford niece lose a private war in public. Arlo escorted her out with professional speed and personal satisfaction he tried very hard to hide. Mr. Whiskers barked after her. "Unnecessary," Victoria told the dog. I looked at her. "He has instincts. He has lungs. So did Isabel." Victoria picked up the folder Isabel had dropped and placed it on the edge of the table without reading it. "You defend your wife loudly for a man who wanted divorce yesterday," she said. "Divorce is paperwork. Insults are immediate. That does not answer the question. You did not ask one." Victoria's gaze flicked once toward the glass wall, where employees were suddenly very busy pretending not to exist. "You also said her figure was better," she said. "My throat forgot what water was for." Arlo, still by the door, turned his head very slowly. I looked at Victoria. "You heard that part?" The entire floor heard that part. Then the entire floor received accurate information. Her expression did not change, her ears did, just barely, pink at the edges. Ruth would have thrown a parade. Victoria only picked up her salad fork and said, "Good nutrition matters if one plans to defend a claim," Arlo whispered. "I resign internally." "Denied," Victoria said. "I sat down because standing made the victory too visible." For a moment the room felt smaller than it was. Victoria's eyes held mine and I could see the line she refused to cross. If she admitted the words mattered, the marriage stopped being only a problem. If I admitted they mattered, so did I. Arlo returned before either of us could make the mistake. "Preston Pierce is downstairs," he said. "He is with Isabel." Victoria's face closed again. "Send them out." "They are not requesting you," Arlo said, glancing at me. "They are arguing." That was better than permission. That was an invitation from chaos. I walked to the glass overlook above the lobby. Victoria did not stop me. Arlo followed because suspicion needed cardio. Below, Preston stood beside Isabel near the security desk, one hand hovering near her shoulder. She slapped it away. "He hit me," Isabel snapped. Preston's face darkened when he saw the mark. Then he did what Preston always did. He turned someone else's pain into his own ladder. "Tomorrow," he told her, loud enough for the lobby to hear, "I will introduce you to Dr. Lark. Once Dr. Lark backs Pierce Energy, Nolan's little act at Ashford Group ends." Isabel looked up at him. "You can really bring Dr. Lark?" Preston straightened. "He owes our family. Professor Brenner already knows the connection." I leaned on the railing. Arlo glanced at me. "Why are you smiling?" My phone buzzed. "Jules Knox. Private sponsor lunch confirmed for tomorrow. Seat reserved under Dr. Lark. Preston Pierce requested access through Pierce Energy. Do you want to attend personally?" Below us, Preston kept talking. "By tomorrow afternoon," he told Isabel, "Nolan will remember where he belongs." I typed one word back to Jules, "Accept." Then I looked down at Preston, who was bragging about meeting a man he had never bothered to recognize. "Arlo," I said, "what is the dress code for a man attending his own ambush?" Arlo looked at my phone, then at my face. For once, suspicion did not give him an answer fast enough. Preston arrived at the private sponsor lunch with Isabel on his arm, and my handprint still faint on her cheek. He did not look embarrassed. That was Preston's talent. He could walk into a room carrying yesterday's humiliation and still act like someone else had dropped it. The private dining room at Havenport Memorial Hospital had one long table, 5 reserved seats, and a white nameplate in front of the chair at the head. Dr. Lark. Preston saw the name first. His whole body straightened. "There," he told Isabel, loud enough for the hospital coordinator to hear. I told you, Dr. Lark values the Pierce family. Isabel touched her cheek like she wanted everyone to remember I had hit her, then smiled at the nameplate like it had come to apologize on my behalf. After today, she said, Nolan can go back to carrying lunch trays. I was standing behind them with Arlo Finch at my side. Arlo looked at the nameplate, then at me, then back at the nameplate. I hate when my suspicions have to update, he muttered. Try stretching first, I said. It prevents injury. Preston heard my voice and turned. His smile flickered for half a second before he repaired it. Nolan, this is a private sponsor lunch, I know. Then why are you here? I looked at the chair with Dr. Lark's name in front of it. For lunch. Isabel laughed once. You think hitting me made you interesting? No, I said. Your reaction did most of the work. Her face tightened. Preston stepped between us before she could make the same mistake twice. This meeting concerns Pierce Energy, Dr. Lark, and Ashford research channels. You are not useful in any of those categories. Professor Miles Brenner came in behind him with a folder tucked under one arm. He stopped when he saw me. Not surprised. Careful. That was the expression a decent man wore when he realized a liar had seated himself too close to a trap door. Professor, Preston said warmly, turning on the practiced respect. I'm glad you're here. You can tell Dr. Lark how valuable our family has been to young researchers. Professor Brenner's eyes moved to me. I can tell him exactly what I know, he said. Preston heard agreement because vanity was cheaper than listening. He pulled out the chair beside the Dr. Lark seat for Isabel. My mother has supported people in this field for years. Eleanor too. Dr. Lark knows kindness when he sees it. The word kindness in his mouth almost made me laugh. Then the side door opened and the laugh died. Agnes Reed wheeled Eleanor Pierce into the room. Eleanor looked smaller in the hospital chair than she ever had by the window at the Pierce house. A soft blanket covered her knees. Her hair had been brushed, but her hands still held that tired tremble she tried to hide when Marla watched too closely. Marla followed behind the chair. Of course she did. She had dressed in cream, the color she wore when she wanted cruelty to look expensive. Eleanor wanted fresh air, Marla said, before anyone asked. And Preston thought Dr. Lark might appreciate seeing the woman whose generosity helped shape his path. Eleanor looked confused by the performance. She saw me. Her face softened before she remembered where she was. Nolan, she said, did you eat? Marla's hand tightened on the wheelchair handle. Preston's smile sharpened. He heard an opening and grabbed it. See, Eleanor worries about everyone. That's why Dr. Lark respects our family. I walked to the table. Preston's gaze followed me with the lazy confidence of a man watching a servant approach the wrong chair. Careful, he said. That seat is reserved. I know. I pulled out the chair under the Dr. Lark nameplate and sat down. For one clean second, nobody spoke. Then Isabel laughed. You are unbelievable. Preston's voice stayed gentle, which made it uglier. Get up, Nolan. Professor Brenner put his folder on the table. Arlo closed the door. The hospital coordinator looked at the list in her hands, then at me, and quietly stepped back. Preston noticed that. His smile thinned. Professor, he said, please explain to him. Professor Brenner looked at Preston. That is Dr. Lark's seat. Exactly, and Nolan Pierce is sitting in it. Preston blinked. The room did not explode. It shrank. Every polished lie Preston had carried into that lunch suddenly had less air to breathe. Isabel looked from Professor Brenner to me. Her hand dropped from her cheek. No, she said. I picked up the nameplate and turned it toward Preston. You requested direct recruitment from Dr. Lark, I said. You requested a private path for Pierce Energy. You requested an introduction through Professor Brenner. You requested permission to bring Isabel so she could see your win. Preston's face emptied. Then pride rushed back in, stupid and loud. This is ridiculous, he said. You cannot just sit under a nameplate and become someone. You tried to stand near Eleanor and become decent, Marla snapped. Watch your mouth. I looked at her hand on Eleanor's chair. Take your hand off her. Marla stiffened. Eleanor looked up at Marla, then at me. Agnes, after one nervous glance, moved the wheelchair half a step away from Marla. It was small. It was enough. Preston placed both hands on the table. Dr. Lark is a professional identity. It has patents attached to it. It has grants attached to it. You think you can steal that because Professor Brenner likes you? I opened the folder in front of me. Inside were three things: a Pierce Energy licensing request, a patent authorization packet, a small stack of unopened birthday cards, each one addressed to Eleanor Pierce in the same plain hand. Preston stared at the top page. His mouth closed. Isabel leaned close, read the header, and stopped breathing through her nose. The direct recruitment request is denied, I said. Preston's head jerked up. You do not have authority to deny anything, Professor Brenner said. He does, Marla pointed at the professor. You knew? I knew enough to know Preston was lying, Professor Brenner said. The rest was not mine to tell. Preston turned on me, mask cracking at the edges. Pierce Energy has invested months into this. Father expects this route. You cannot punish the whole company because you are angry with me. I'm not angry. You hit me. That was pricing. Arlo made a sound that might have been a cough if he had less self-respect. I slid the Pierce Energy request back into the folder. Pierce Energy can apply through the ordinary partner review. No direct recruitment, no special seat, no Preston Pierce as gatekeeper. Preston's ears went red. You would damage your own family? My family? I looked at Eleanor. Let's ask carefully. Eleanor's fingers tightened on her blanket. Marla took one step forward. Do not drag her into this. You did that when you wheeled her in as a receipt. Marla's fingers tightened on the table edge. Not honest, dangerous. Preston grabbed the safer angle. Dr. Lark owes Eleanor gratitude? Everyone knows she sponsored early medical work when no one else cared. If you are really connected to that name, then you should honor the woman who helped you. I have. I took the birthday cards from the folder and placed them in front of Eleanor. Agnes whispered, those came every year. Eleanor looked down at them, her lips parted. The first card was soft blue, worn at the edge from being held too many times. She touched it with 2 fingers. I thought, her voice broke, I thought a foundation sent these. No foundation, I said. Marla's face changed. For years, Marla had let Eleanor believe those gifts came from somewhere clean and distant. A generous stranger, a program, a charitable office. Anything except the child Marla had trained the house to ignore. Eleanor looked at me. You? I did not trust my voice for a second. Then Preston made the mistake of breathing. Nolan always liked dramatic gestures, he said. I looked at him. You always liked eating from other people's plates? His jaw clenched. Eleanor picked up one card. Her hands trembled so badly that Agnes helped her open it. Inside was the same short line I had written for years, for the woman who noticed hunger. Eleanor's eyes filled. Marla looked away. Marla looked away before Eleanor finished. The locked doors were written all over her face. You paid for my medicine, Eleanor whispered. Not all of it, I said. Enough when I could. The winter blankets? Yes. The red scarf? You said the hospital was too gray. Eleanor pressed the card to her chest. The room did not need a speech. Preston had entered claiming Dr. Lark owed his family. The truth was uglier for him. Dr. Lark had been repaying the one woman in that house Preston never bothered to thank. Isabel stared at me as if I had changed shape in front of her. It was not affection yet, it was worse for Preston. Calculation. You are Dr. Lark, she said, quiet now. Today, yes. Today? Some days I am the delivery worker. Some days I am the illegitimate problem. Depends who needs to embarrass themselves. Her cheek flushed under yesterday's mark. Preston saw her looking and lost whatever patience he had left. Enough, he said. Even if this alias is yours, you are still a Pierce. You do not get to cut Pierce Energy out and humiliate me in front of Isabel. You brought Isabel to watch. To watch Dr. Lark recognize me. He did. Arlo lowered his gaze to hide a smile. Professor Brenner did not bother hiding his. Marla slammed her palm on the table. The cups jumped. You ungrateful boy. Eleanor flinched. I stood. So did Arlo. Not for me exactly, for what Victoria had told him to protect. Marla noticed the movement and stopped with her hand still flat on the table. Say it again, I told her. Her eyes burned. I raised you. Then name one birthday gift you gave me. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor looked at Marla, and something old and weak but sharp moved through her face. Marla, she whispered. Why didn't I know? Marla's fingers curled against the tablecloth. Preston stepped in fast. Eleanor, please don't stress yourself. Nolan is trying to confuse you. I looked at him. The cards confused her? Your timing did. You scheduled the lunch, because Dr. Lark was supposed to help this family. He did, I said. He helped the member worth helping. That landed, not as a shout, as a demotion. Preston came to the table expecting Isabel to see him as the bridge to power. Instead, she was watching me sign nothing, deny him everything, and speak from the chair he had been bragging about for a week. The hospital coordinator, who had been pretending not to listen, cleared her throat. Dr. Lark, should I update the sponsor records to list Eleanor Pierce as the sole personal beneficiary for the continuing gifts? Preston's head snapped toward her. Marla went still. I kept my eyes on Eleanor. Yes, and Pierce Energy? Standard review only, no Preston route. The coordinator nodded and left before anyone could bully her into staying. Preston's phone rang before the door finished closing. Richard Pierce. Preston looked at the screen, then at me, then answered with the speaker off. That lasted 3 seconds. Richard's voice cut through anyway. Do you have him? Preston's mouth tightened. Father, there has been a complication. Richard hated that word. In the Pierce house, complication meant money had escaped supervision. Put him on, Richard ordered. Preston did not want to. That was why I held out my hand. He stared at it like I had asked for his ring finger. Unless you want to explain later why you hid Dr. Lark from Pierce Energy, I said. Isabel heard that and looked at Preston. There was no romantic wound in her expression now, just asset panic. Preston put the phone on speaker and placed it on the table. Dr. Lark, Richard said quickly, turning respect on so fast it almost sounded rehearsed. Whatever my sons have done between themselves, Pierce Energy values your work. My sons. He used the plural only when money was listening. Richard, I said. The speaker went silent, then his voice came back lower. Nolan? Dr. Lark, today. Marla's hand clenched against her skirt. Richard breathed once through his nose. I could picture him in his office, staring at nothing, trying to rebuild a ladder out of ash. This is not the place for childish resentment, he said. Good. Then we agree Preston should not be in the room. Preston's head snapped up. What? I kept my eyes on the phone. Pierce Energy's direct path is closed. If the company applies their standard review, Preston's name cannot be attached to the request. Richard did not answer right away. That pause was a gift. It told Isabel exactly how quickly Preston's golden sun glow dimmed when Dr. Lark carried the switch. We will discuss this privately, Richard said. No, I said. You called on speaker. Speakerphones make graves. Arlo looked down at the floor. Professor Brenner looked out the window. Neither saved Preston. Richard ended the call. Preston stood there with his hand beside the phone, looking like someone had removed a family portrait from the wall and found mold behind it. There it was, not a speech, a consequence. Preston had lost the direct route. Isabel had watched it happen. Eleanor had learned who had been quietly paying back her kindness. Marla had lost one more wall between her cruelty and the woman she liked to keep weak. Then my phone buzzed. Victoria Ashford, one message, boardroom tomorrow. Arthur and Camille are asking why Dr. Lark is inside my building and why you are near Ruth. I showed the screen to Arlo. He read it and looked personally offended by the existence of another room. Do people in rich families ever sit quietly? He asked. Only before they lose money. Preston tried to recover by leaning over Eleanor's chair. Please don't listen to him. He has always been jealous. He wants to turn you against the only son who stayed clean. Eleanor looked at the birthday card in her lap. Clean, she repeated. Marla's face tightened. It was a small word, too small for the panic it caused. Agnes saw it too. Her gaze moved from Marla to Eleanor's hospital bracelet, then to the old cards. Mrs. Pierce, Agnes said carefully to Eleanor, your memory box is still in storage at the house, the one from Havenport Memorial Hospital. It has the baby things you kept asking about. Marla turned so fast her earrings flashed. Agnes, she said. Agnes went pale. I only meant, bring it, Eleanor said. The room quieted again, but this time the silence belonged to Marla. Eleanor's voice stayed thin. The small bracelet, the one from the hospital. I want to see it. Marla took the handles of the wheelchair. You need rest. I stepped into her path. She looked at me with pure hate. Her hate did not land like ordinary hate. It looked like fear wearing makeup. Agnes, Marla said, not taking her eyes off me, bring the box to my room first. Agnes hesitated. Marla's voice sharpened. Now! Eleanor clutched the card to her chest. Why your room? Marla smiled at her. It was gentle. It was the ugliest thing she had done all afternoon. Because some memories hurt you, Marla said. Agnes left. Marla's fingers dug into the wheelchair handles. Preston looked from the door to the memory box, 1 second too late. Losing Dr. Lark had opened a door his family had spent years locking from the other side. Marla tried to bury Eleanor's memory box before breakfast. Agnes called me from a hallway outside the VIP ward, whispering so softly I had to press the phone against my ear. She told me to bring it to her room first, Agnes said. Not Mrs. Pierce's room, hers! That was not how innocent people handled old baby bracelets. I found Agnes with a faded blue box on a metal cart. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair beside the window, half awake, watching the box as if it had been calling her for years. Marla stood between Eleanor and the cart. Nolan, Marla said, leave. You invited the box. I invited Agnes. Same mistake. Agnes answers questions. Agnes lowered her eyes, but she did not move the cart away. Eleanor lifted one shaking hand. The little bracelet, she said. I kept it. Marla's smile went thin. You kept many things. Most of them upset you. Then stop upsetting her, I said. Marla looked at me like she could still slap me in a room full of monitors. Before she could try, Arlo appeared at the doorway with his phone in his hand. Boardroom, he said. Now! I looked at the memory box. Marla looked at it too. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then Victoria's voice came through Arlo's phone, calm and sharp. Nolan, Arthur, and Camille are using Dr. Lark to challenge Ruth's care plan. If you want answers from that box, keep Ruth protected first. Marla heard enough. Her relief was quick. Too quick. Go, she said. Play researcher. Let the adults handle family. I stepped close enough that she could hear me without Eleanor hearing every word. If one thing disappears from that box, I said, I will make your hands famous. Marla's eyes flashed. Agnes swallowed. Eleanor kept looking at the lid. I left the hospital with Arlo and took the old pressure with me. One room behind me held a box. Marla feared, and one room ahead held people trying to turn that fear into a company knife. The Ashford boardroom was built to make ordinary people feel temporary. Glass wall, long black table, city below. Ashford's seal on the far wall. Enough polished wood to make every sentence sound more expensive than it deserved. Arthur Ashford stood at the front with a folder in his hand. Camille sat beside him, diamonds bright under daylight, smiling like a woman who had already spent money she did not own. Victoria sat at the head of the table. She did not look at me when I entered. That was anger. Not at me. At the fact that she needed me. Arthur looked me up and down. There he is, East Row's newest board advisor. Camille's smile widened. Should we give him a seat or a mop? Arlo made a quiet note on his tablet. I looked at him. Are you writing that down? For personality evidence, he said. Arthur slapped the folder on the table. This is exactly the problem. He treats Ashford Group like a private joke because Ruth is confused and Victoria is indulging him. Victoria's eyes lifted. Careful. No, Arthur said. Careful is what this board should have been before a man from East Row walked into our research floor, exposed himself as Dr. Lark, and started holding Bright Arc access over the family. Several board members shifted. Good. Arthur had picked his weapon. Now everyone could see the blade. Camille leaned forward. Ruth's condition makes her vulnerable. We all respect her, but she has been calling this man grandson-in-law, pushing him into family spaces and mixing him into Solace 9 decisions. We cannot let a stranger exploit that. A stranger? I said. Camille looked at me. You prefer husband? Fine. A husband nobody remembers marrying. The boardroom tightened. Victoria's hand rested on the table, still, not clenched, still. That was worse. Arthur pointed at me. He is accused of 3 things: exploiting Ruth, stealing Ashford research, using Bright Arc to force his way into this company. 3 accusations, I said. You almost sound prepared. I am prepared. Then this will be fast. Arthur's smile came back. Please, explain to the board how a boy with an East Row apartment became the most convenient man in Ruth's medical trial, Victoria's marriage record, and Dr. Lark's patent chain. That was a good line, too good. It made him confident enough to keep talking. Clearspring Therapeutics will not move Solace 9 forward unless Bright Arc authorization clears today, Arthur said. Bright Arc authorization is now conveniently controlled by him, and he expects us to believe he is not extorting this family. The screen at the wall changed. A live status notice appeared. Bright Arc authorization pending. Camille looked pleased with herself. If Ruth's treatment is delayed, the board should ask who benefits. Victoria turned to me. Do you? She asked it like a challenge, not a doubt. Still, everyone heard it, so I answered clearly, no. Arthur spread his hands. Wonderful. Then sign away the Bright Arc issue right now. No conditions, no special treatment, no more playing poor wounded husband while holding Ruth's recovery hostage. There it was. The trap had teeth. If I refused, I looked like the man delaying Ruth's treatment. If I signed blindly, Arthur and Camille got access to the one route they had been circling since Ruth cut Preston's trust share gift. I walked to the screen. Arthur looked satisfied. Camille looked hungry. Victoria watched me in that cold, impossible way she had, like she was measuring whether I would choose power, pride, or the old woman sleeping upstairs. I pointed at the screen. Who added the branch distribution side letter? Arthur's smile paused. Only for a breath. Enough. That is not the subject, he said. It is the only subject. Camille's bracelets clicked. You are dodging. No, I'm reading. The board members looked from me to Arthur. Arthur's neck colored. The side letter protects Ashford interests. It gives your branch control over distribution once Solace 9 moves through Clearspring Therapeutics, I said. It also cuts Ruth's priority access if her trust position changes. Cute clause, ugly timing. Camille stood. You have no authority to interpret Ashford agreements. He has authority to interpret his own patent conditions, Victoria said. The boardroom snapped toward her. She finally looked at me. Continue. That one word moved my chair farther than any title could have. Arthur heard it too. His jaw tightened. I tapped the screen. The problem is not Bright Arc. The problem is Arthur trying to smuggle his family's profit route into Ruth's treatment channel, then blaming me when Bright Arc refused the dirty version. You arrogant little, Camille started. Victoria's voice cut through. Finish that sentence carefully. Camille sat down. Not because she was calm. Because she had just remembered whose room it was. I took out my phone and opened Jules Knox's waiting message. Clean terms ready. No branch side letter. Ruth priority locked. Dr. Lark authorization pending your verbal approval. Arthur saw the phone. You staged this, he said. You drafted the dirty paper. You waited to embarrass us. You called the board. Arlo whispered. Technically accurate. Victoria did not look at him. Arlo. Silencing myself, I placed the phone on the table where the board could see the clean approval text without needing a lecture. Brightarc will authorize Solace 9 today under clean terms, I said. Ruth's access stays locked. Clear Spring Therapeutics moves. Arthur and Camille get no side channel. Pierce Energy gets nothing through this room. If anyone wants to argue, argue out loud where the board can hear which part offends you. The room went quiet. Not empty quiet. Calculating quiet. The kind rich people used when they realized a public objection would expose private greed. Arthur looked at Victoria. You are letting him dictate Ashford's strategy. Victoria leaned back. No, I am letting the man who found your knife remove it from my grandmother's treatment. Camille's face hardened. He is manipulating you. Victoria's eyes moved to her. You used Ruth's illness as leverage 5 minutes after accusing him of exploiting her. I would sit down before the room compares performances. Camille sat all the way back this time. The room speaker chimed. Arthur reached for the console too quickly. Victoria's eyes moved to his hand. He stopped. Arlo tapped his tablet and opened the line. A Clear Spring Therapeutics liaison came through the speaker. Ashford Group, we have 2 conflicting Solace 9 authorizations. 1 includes Brightarc restrictions. 1 removes the branch side letter. We need Dr. Lark's confirmation before we release the treatment window. Arthur straightened like a drowning man seeing rope. This is Arthur Ashford, he said. I can confirm Ashford approval. The liaison paused. We need Dr. Lark. Camille's mouth tightened. Arthur tried again. Ashford Group controls the board approval, and Brightarc controls the patent gate, the liaison said. We need Dr. Lark. That sentence did more for the board than any speech I could have given. Arthur had spent the morning calling me a stray. The room speaker had just refused to recognize his leash. Victoria looked at me. Not asking. Allowing. I leaned toward the speaker. This is Dr. Lark. The clean authorization stands. Ruth Ashford keeps priority access. The branch side letter is rejected. The liaison answered immediately. Confirmed. No applause, no gasp. Just Arthur staring at a speaker that had chosen my voice over his name. The screen refreshed. Brightarc authorization accepted. Solace 9, status cleared. It was only 2 lines. Arthur looked like the lines had slapped him. I preferred efficiency. One board member at the far end asked, so the treatment was never blocked by Nolan? Arthur did not answer. Camille looked at the table. I said, it was blocked by greed wearing a family name. Victoria let that sit for exactly 1 second. Then she made it expensive. That was the part Arthur had forgotten. In Ashford Group, embarrassment was only the appetizer. The bill came in access, authority, and public shame all at once. Victoria turned to the board members. Arthur and Camille are removed from Solace 9 oversight until Ruth is stable. Their branch will have no distribution authority through Clear Spring Therapeutics without direct board review. Arthur slammed his palm on the table. You cannot strip us because your secret husband is useful. There it was. Secret husband. He had meant it as poison. Victoria did not flinch. Neither did I. That seemed to bother Arthur more than a denial would have. She said, I am stripping you because you tried to profit from my grandmother's damaged memory and got caught by the man you called a mop. Arlo looked at his tablet. Personality evidence now has payoff. I looked at him. Proud of you. Do not make this friendship. Too late. Victoria stood, and the board stood with her because power is mostly choreography with consequences. Arthur stayed seated 1 second too long. Camille grabbed his sleeve and pulled him up. They left the room with their folder and none of the access they had entered with. That was the board trap's real shape. They had wanted to make me look like a parasite feeding on Ruth's confusion. Instead, they showed the board exactly who had brought a fork. Victoria waited until the doors closed. Then she looked at the screen again. Ruth's treatment is cleared? Today, I said. Her shoulders did not drop. Victoria Ashford did not give relief to rooms that might use it against her, but her fingers loosened around the pen. That was enough. Thank you, she said. Every board member still inside heard it. So did Arlo. He stared at me like I had become an HR problem. I said, you're welcome. Victoria's mouth moved like it almost wanted to say something else. Then her phone rang. She read the screen and her expression changed. Ruth is asking for Nolan. The boardroom wind was not even cold before the next door opened. We returned to Havenport Memorial Hospital with the Solace 9 approval moving behind us and the memory box waiting ahead like a second blade. Agnes met us outside Ruth's room. Her face told me Marla had lost patience. She tried to take the bracelet, Agnes whispered. Victoria's eyes cut to the door. Marla? Agnes nodded. Ruth woke before she could. Inside the room, Ruth sat upright in bed with the faded blue box open on her lap. Eleanor sat beside her, pale and frightened. Marla stood near the foot of the bed with both hands folded too tightly. Preston was there too. Of course he was. He looked at me, then at Victoria, then at the box. That order told me what he feared most. Ruth held a tiny infant bracelet between two fingers. The plastic had yellowed. The old writing had faded until it was more shadow than name. Ruth looked at me. Not through me. At me. Wrong, she said. Marla's breath caught. Eleanor whispered, Ruth? Ruth's fingers shook. She lifted the bracelet toward me as if I should already understand. The bracelet on the baby was wrong. The machines by the bed kept beeping. No one else did. Preston forced a smile. It was a bad smile. Too polished for a hospital room and too frightened for a son who supposedly had nothing to hide. Ruth, please, he said, soft and careful. You mean my bracelet, right? Mother kept a lot of my old things. Ruth looked at him. For one strange second, dislike sharpened her face. Tools out, she whispered. Preston's smile froze. Marla said, she is mixing memories. Ruth looked back at the bracelet. No, wrong, I told her. Eleanor gripped the arm of her chair so hard her knuckles changed color. Told who? Eleanor asked. Marla moved before I did. Enough! This is hurting her. Victoria stepped between Marla and the bed. No dramatic gesture, no raised voice, just her body placed where Marla wanted to pass. Ruth decides when it is enough, Victoria said. That did something to the room. Arthur and Camille had tried to use Ruth's illness in a boardroom. Marla was trying to use it at her bedside. For once, Victoria's coldness was not distance. It was a locked door. I stepped closer. Which baby? Ruth stared at the bracelet. For 1 second her eyes were painfully clear. The quiet baby, she said. No, not quiet. Hungry, he cried when she left him. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. Marla moved. Ruth is confused. This is exactly why I said the box would upset her. Victoria's voice stopped her. Do not touch that box. Marla froze. Ruth looked from me to Eleanor, then back to the bracelet. I told her, Ruth whispered. I told her that was not the bracelet. My pulse hit once, hard. Told who? Ruth blinked. The clarity slipped. You could see it leave. Her eyes filled with the helpless panic of someone watching a door shut from the wrong side. Grandson, she said, suddenly softer. Did you eat? The question was wrong for the moment. That made it hurt worse. Eleanor started crying without sound. Marla reached for the box again, but Agnes moved first and pulled it to her side. That small disobedience changed the room. Marla saw it. So did Preston. Victoria stepped beside the bed and took the bracelet from Ruth with careful fingers. She did not ask the question again. She did not have to. Everyone in that room had heard enough to know the old Pierce story had a crack in it. Not proof, not yet, but a crack with teeth. Preston looked at Marla. Marla looked at the door. And I looked at the woman who had called herself my mother for years as she realized Ruth's damaged memory had just pointed at the one place she could not afford me to look. Ruth's bracelet clue did not give me an answer. It gave Marla a deadline. By morning, she was trying to move Eleanor out of Havenport Memorial Hospital. Agnes called before sunrise. This time she did not whisper. Mrs. Pierce is scared, Agnes said. Eleanor? No. Marla. That woke me faster than coffee ever had. When I reached the VIP ward, Eleanor was sitting on the edge of her bed in a robe, pale and confused, while Marla stood over a discharge form she had no business touching. Preston stood by the window with his phone in his hand. He had not slept. Good. Sleepless fear made his polish look cheaper. Agnes stood near Eleanor's chair with both hands folded around the strap of the memory box. Marla noticed her grip. You can leave, Marla told Agnes. You have been confused about who you serve. Agnes went still. For years, Agnes had spoken to me with the careful distance of someone who believed Marla's version first and Eleanor's kindness second. She had watched me come and go through the Pierce house like an unpaid apology. She had not known what to do with me. Now Marla was giving her a choice in front of Eleanor. Agnes looked at the bed. Eleanor looked back at her, tired and frightened and still trying to understand why everyone suddenly cared about an old bracelet. Agnes tightened her grip on the box. I serve Mrs. Pierce, Agnes said. Marla's head turned slowly. That one sentence did not save anyone, but it changed the price of lying. Preston pushed himself off the window. Agnes, this is not the morning for loyalty theater. Agnes swallowed. No, Mr. Pierce, it looks like it is exactly the morning for it. Preston's face hardened. I almost smiled, not because the line was brave, because Marla hated courage most when it came from people she had already priced as furniture. Marla saw me and slid the paper under a folder. You are not needed here. People keep saying that right before they need me. Preston lifted his chin. Eleanor is leaving. The hospital environment has become stressful. Eleanor looked at him. I did not ask to leave. Marla turned toward her with that soft poison voice. You're exhausted, Eleanor. Nolan keeps dragging old objects into your room. Ruth asked for the box, I said. Marla's eyes snapped back to me. Ruth is ill, and still harder to fool than you hoped. Preston stepped forward. Stop. You first. He glanced at Eleanor, then lowered his voice. You got your scene yesterday. Dr. Lark, birthday cards, all of it. Congratulations. But if you keep pushing, you will hurt the one person you pretend to protect. That one was smarter. He knew where to aim. Eleanor's hands were shaking in her lap. Agnes stood near the cabinet with the memory box behind her feet, not hidden well enough to fool Marla, but far enough away that Marla would have to cross the room to reach it. Marla saw where I looked. Agnes, she said, take that box downstairs. Agnes did not move. It was the second time in 2 days she had disobeyed Marla in a room where I could see it. Preston noticed. His mouth tightened. That was how old houses started falling, not with screams, with servants realizing the ceiling was already cracked. I put a folder on Eleanor's bedside table. Marla's eyes dropped to it. So did Preston's. The top page carried Dr. Lark's name. The second carried Bright Arc Energy. I had not signed either one. But greed rarely reads before reaching. What is that? Marla asked. A way to protect Eleanor. Preston's body went still. Marla looked from the folder to my face. Protect her how? Pierce Energy wants Dr. Lark access. Bright Arc can block enough routes to make that painful. You want me quiet about the bracelet. You want Eleanor away from Ruth. You want Preston's engagement protected before the old story breaks. Marla's lips parted. Then she smiled. Not kindly. Victoriously. She thought I was negotiating. That was the only language she respected. Preston recovered first. You are offering terms? I'm asking what you are afraid of. Preston's eyes sharpened with sudden hope. That hope was almost insulting. If this is about recognition, he said, we can fix that. The engagement signing will be full of Ashford people. I can say publicly that you helped connect Pierce Energy to Dr. Lark. I looked at him. You would let me be useful in your speech? Do not mock this, Preston said. You wanted a place. Fine. Stand near the family. Let people see you are not being thrown away. Eleanor's face twisted. Marla did not. Preston had finally spoken her language well enough to make her proud. Offer me a collar and call it belonging. Near the family, I said, not above it. Of course. And not near Isabel, Preston added, his voice tightening for the first time. Whatever performance you put on yesterday, she chose me. There it was. The Dr. Lark reveal had not only cost him business, his eyes kept cutting toward Isabel, like he was afraid she had started measuring the wrong brother. Relax, I said. I already told her I like my wife better. Preston's jaw jumped. Marla looked from him to me, irritated that romance jealousy had entered a room where she was trying to manage a crime. Marla walked closer to the folder. You always did dress up selfishness as concern, Eleanor whispered. Nolan? I looked at her. I am not signing anything that hurts you. Marla laughed. You still want to look noble in front of her? No, I said. I want you to talk. The room sharpened. Preston's eyes moved to Marla too quickly. There. Fear travels faster than lies. Marla folded her arms. Fine, you want simple? Preston needs the Bright Arc route. Pierce Energy needs the public Dr. Lark connection. Isabel's family needs to see stability before the engagement signing. In exchange, Eleanor stays comfortable, Ruth stops being agitated, and you stop digging through things that happened before you knew how to hold a spoon. Eleanor flinched at that last line. I did not. Before I knew how to hold a spoon, I repeated. Marla's face tightened. Strange place for you to draw the line, I said. You always said I came into the family already dirty. Preston stepped in. This is pointless. No, this is the first useful conversation your mother has had with me. Marla's hand twitched. I smiled. Go ahead, hit me. Preston still has a face. Preston went red. Eleanor's eyes moved between us, lost and frightened and trying to catch words that kept turning into knives. Marla lowered her hand. Good. She remembered the price. You want Dr. Lark? I said. You want Bright Arc? You want me to stop asking why Ruth remembered the wrong bracelet? Then answer one question. Marla stared at me. Why does Preston deserve everything I earned? She scoffed. Because Preston understands family. Wrong. Because he has never tried to destroy us. Wrong again. Her voice rose. Because he is the son who should stand in that place. Eleanor's face changed. Marla heard herself too late. I took one step closer. What place? Preston said. Mother. One word, not warning. Panic. Marla ignored him because old rage had taken the wheel. Do not ask questions you cannot survive, Nolan. I survived you. You survived because I allowed it. Eleanor made a small sound. Marla turned toward her, then back to me, trapped between cruelty and caution. I tapped the folder. The Dr. Lark letter goes nowhere until you answer. Preston's hand curled around his phone. Nolan, he said, think carefully. If you burn this family, you burn Eleanor too. You keep using her as a hostage and calling it family. Marla stepped close enough for me to smell her perfume. Eleanor is fragile, because you kept her that way? Her eyes went flat. For once, the mask did not crack. It fell off. Eleanor was fragile long before I touched anything, Marla said. She could not even keep track of her own baby. The room stopped moving. Agnes put one hand over her mouth. Eleanor stared at Marla as if the words had crossed the room slower than sound. I did not breathe yet. If I pushed too hard, Marla would retreat. If I pushed too softly, she would live inside the crack. So I used her favorite script. Then Preston deserved it, I said. Marla's eyes flashed. Of course he did. Preston closed his eyes. Just once. Too late. Preston was healthy, Marla said. Bright, strong. Richard needed a son who would not embarrass the family. Eleanor was half dead, crying over a bracelet and a baby she could barely hold. Eleanor's breath broke. I kept my voice low. And me? Marla looked me up and down with the disgust she had practiced for years. You were hungry before you could speak. Eleanor began to shake. Agnes moved toward her, but Eleanor lifted one hand, stopping her. Marla was still talking, too deep in her own bitterness to notice the woman she had tried to remove was hearing every word. That bracelet should never have stayed where it started, Marla said. I corrected what everyone else was too weak to fix. There it was, not the whole truth, not the final shape, but enough. Enough to make every illegitimate insult in my life suddenly stand on rotten floor. Enough to make Eleanor look at me like she was seeing hunger from 20 years away. Enough to make Preston's future smell like smoke. I picked up the Dr. Lark folder and slid it back under my arm. Marla blinked. What are you doing? Keeping my property. We had a deal. No, I said. You had bait in your teeth. Preston lunged for the folder. Arlo stepped through the doorway and caught his wrist before he touched it. I had not seen him enter. That meant Victoria had sent him before Marla began talking. For once, I appreciated suspicion with legs. Preston yanked back. Let go. Arlo released him. Happy too. I dislike touching liabilities. Marla turned toward the doorway. Victoria stood there. She had heard enough. Her face was colder than the hospital glass. Eleanor stays, Victoria said. Marla tried to recover with dignity. This is Pierce family business. Victoria entered the room. You made it Ashford business when you used my grandmother's memory, my boardroom, and my husband's work to protect your lie. Husband, she said it cleanly, not loudly, not tenderly. Cleanly enough that Preston heard the future moving away from him. Isabel was not there to see it. That was the only reason he did not break completely. Eleanor stood. Agnes reached for her, but Eleanor shook her head. She took one slow step toward Marla. What did you do to my baby? Eleanor asked. Marla's face went white. No insult could have done that. No slap, no board vote. The question did it because it came from the woman Marla had spent years keeping quiet. Eleanor took another step. Her knees shook. Agnes moved beside her, not in front of her, and that mattered. For once, someone helped Eleanor stand without using weakness as a leash. Eleanor looked at me. There was no certainty in her face, only terror trying to become memory. Nolan, she said. Come here. Marla snapped. No! The word came out too fast, too raw. Eleanor turned back to her. Why not? Marla's mouth worked. Preston stepped in because he had always known how to fill silence with manners. Because you are upset and Nolan is provoking you. Eleanor did not look at him. She kept looking at Marla. Why not? She asked again. Marla's eyes flicked to the memory box. I saw it. Agnes saw it. Victoria saw it from the doorway. Eleanor followed the look and whispered, the bracelet. Marla recovered enough to laugh once. An old hospital bracelet proves nothing. Then why did you try to take it? I asked. Marla's laugh stopped. Preston said, because you keep weaponizing sick women. I looked at him. You say that a lot for someone using two of them as shields. His face flushed. Eleanor held out her hand toward me again. I crossed the room. Marla moved as if to block me. Victoria said, try. One word. Marla stopped. I stood close enough for Eleanor to touch my sleeve. Her fingers brushed the cuff, light and shaking. It was not a claim. Not yet. But Preston watched that touch like someone had started signing away his inheritance. Preston stepped between them. Eleanor, please sit down. You're confused. Eleanor looked at him. Preston failed to look like the safe one. Do not call me confused, Eleanor said. He swallowed. Marla's eyes ran toward the door again. Victoria moved slightly, not blocking it completely, just enough to remind her doors also belong to people with power. I looked at Agnes. Keep the memory box with Eleanor. Agnes nodded before Marla could speak. That nod hit Marla harder than obedience had ever helped her. Preston backed toward the window and lifted his phone. Who are you calling? I asked. He did not answer. He did not need to. He had lost Dr. Lark. He had lost the clean Pierce family story. He had heard Victoria call me husband in a room where Isabel was not there to manage, so he reached for the one status object he still thought could cover the blood on the floor, the Ashford engagement. Preston spoke into the phone, voice low and fast. "Move the signing up, tonight if you can, tomorrow morning at the latest. We need it locked before this spreads." Marla snapped. "Preston!" He ignored her. That was new too. Fear had made him rude. Victoria watched him call. She did not stop him. That bothered me until I saw her eyes. She was not letting him escape. She was letting him choose the room where he wanted to lose. My own phone buzzed before Preston finished speaking. "Isabel!" I almost did not answer. Then I thought of the way she had watched me under Dr. Lark's nameplate. I put the call on speaker. Isabel's voice came through bright and sharp. "Nolan, good news! Preston and I are moving the Ashford engagement signing forward." Preston lowered his phone. Marla stared at mine. Eleanor stood beside the bed, still shaking. Victoria did not move. Isabel continued, enjoying herself. "Since you keep orbiting my family like a stray with a badge, you can come watch. I will even make sure you have a place." "How generous." "Do not misunderstand," Isabel said. "Not with the family, not with guests. You can stand on the servant's side, where you used to look most natural." The hospital room went silent. I looked at Victoria. Her expression did not change. But her left hand, the one nearest mine, curled once, then relaxed. I looked at the phone. "Send the time," I said. Isabel laughed. "You actually want to watch me marry Preston?" "No," I said. "I want a good view." I ended the call. Victoria looked at the dark screen in my hand. "You know she means to humiliate you," she said. "She has been meaning to humiliate me for years. Her aim is getting worse." Preston's face hardened because he did not know whether I meant the signing, the collapse, or both. Neither did I completely. I only knew this. Marla's lie had cracked in a hospital room, Eleanor had heard it, and Preston was dragging Isabel onto a stage before anyone could clean the floor. People like Preston always believed a bigger room made a lie safer. I had spent weeks learning the opposite. Isabel sent the engagement time before the hospital room had finished breathing again. 9 tonight. Ashford Ridge Estates, formal hall, dress properly, staff will show you where to stand. She even added a little heart. I showed the message to Victoria because I wanted to see whether her face could get colder than the hospital glass. It could? Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed with Agnes beside her and the memory box under Agnes's hand. Marla stood near the door like a woman waiting for a fire alarm. Preston had already left to save whatever he could, still pretend was his. Victoria read the message once, then she handed my phone back. "You are going to the servant's side?" "No," she said, to the side she should have feared. Ruth, who had been half asleep until that sentence, opened one eye. "Wear the dark suit. Husbands look useful in dark suits." "I own one dark suit," I said. "It has county clerk trauma on it." "Then it already knows marriage," Ruth said. Victoria looked at Ruth. "You are not attending." Ruth closed her eye again. Very fragile grandmother, very selective hearing. Arlo from the doorway whispered, "This family uses medical weakness like a weapon." Ruth smiled without opening her eyes. "Good. You learned." The formal hall at Ashford Ridge Estates had been dressed like a wedding preview and priced like a small lawsuit. White flowers, gold chairs, a long table with the engagement contract centered under a spotlight. A velvet ring box sat beside it, open just enough to let everyone see that the Ashford family had brought history to the table. Preston stood near that table in a clean suit, all bruises hidden under powder and arrogance. Isabel stood beside him in white, not a wedding dress, but close enough to tell every woman in the room what she wanted them to imagine. Camille moved between guests with diamonds and hunger. Arthur stood by the contract, one hand resting on a board proxy packet as if touching paper made him powerful. Marla stood behind Preston, watching every door. Richard Pierce had come too. He looked tired, irritated, and terrified that scandal might find a microphone. I entered through the main doors because I had stopped taking side entrances from people who needed my humiliation to feel rich. A staff coordinator hurried toward me with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "Nolan Pierce," she said. "Isabel Ashford asked us to seat you near service access." "Did she?" "She said you would understand." "She was right," I said. "I understand perfectly." The coordinator pointed to a narrow space near the wall, half hidden behind a floral screen. It was not a seat. It was a warning with upholstery. Isabel saw me stop there and smiled. She crossed the room slowly so everyone would have time to notice I had arrived alone. "Nolan," she said, bright enough to curdle cream. "You came. You invited me. I invited you to watch, not to wander." Preston joined her with his smooth public face already repaired. "Let him stay, Isabel. After tonight, he will understand the difference between a public fiancé and a county office rumor." Several guests turned their heads. Good. A humiliation without witnesses was just a rehearsal. Isabel stepped closer and lowered her voice just enough to pretend mercy. You should be grateful. I could have kept you outside after what you did to me. Your cheek healed fast, your judgment did not. Her smile trembled. Preston touched her elbow. Possessive, careful, territorial. Nolan, he said, this is an Ashford family event. Do not turn it into another scene. I looked at the contract behind him. You moved the signing up because your family story started bleeding. That was already a scene. Preston's fingers tightened on Isabel's arm. Marla heard me and moved in like a knife in a silk sleeve. You should be ashamed to show your face after what you did at the hospital. Eleanor is confused because of you. Behind her, Richard said my name like a warning. Nolan. I did not look at him. Careful, Richard. You only call me your son when money is listening. A few guests shifted. Richard went red. Isabel seized the room back before the bloodline question could grow teeth. She lifted one hand toward the floral screen. You can stand there, she said. It is close to the staff. You always look natural on that side. There it was, the line she had promised over the phone, now delivered in public with flowers, contracts, and a ring waiting behind her. I looked at the place she had given me. Then I walked to it. Preston moved to the signing table and lifted the ring box with 2 fingers. Since you are already near the staff, he said, make yourself useful. Hold this until the blessing. The staff coordinator went stiff. She knew it was wrong. She also knew whose name was on her paycheck, whose family owned the floor under her shoes, and whose engagement she had been told to protect. I looked at the ring box. Isabel's smile returned. Do not be dramatic. You used to carry things for Preston all the time. Shoes? Preston said softly. Coats, bags, whatever Mother asked. Marla's eyes warmed, not with love but with memory. Any room where Preston could make me small again still pleased her. Richard said nothing. Of course he said nothing. Silence had been his signature on most of my childhood. Preston held the ring box closer. Take it! Show the Ashford family you can behave! The old Nolan would have taken it, not because Preston deserved obedience, but because rooms like that punish the person who refuses more loudly than the person who humiliates him. I took the ring box. Preston's smile widened. Isabel's eyes shone with ugly satisfaction. Then I turned, walked to the signing table, and set the box back in the exact center of the contract where everyone could see it. There, I said. It can wait for a man who earns it. Preston's smile died again. The staff coordinator looked down so fast I almost felt bad for her. Isabel's voice sharpened. You think you are too good to hold my ring now? No, I said. I think your ring is too nervous to be near me. It knows how often Preston drops things. A board member near Arthur coughed into his hand. Camille's eyes snapped toward him, and the cough vanished. Preston stepped close enough to lower his voice without losing the audience. You are making a mistake. After tonight, Isabel is my Ashford connection. Father will restore everything you tried to cost me. Dr. Lark will not protect you forever. I looked at his bare lapel, where the Pierce crest still sat for now. You keep talking about protection like it belongs to you. Strange habit for a man who hides behind every woman in the room. His hand twitched. Marla saw it and hissed, Preston, not here. Not because she cared about violence, because she cared about witnesses. Isabel leaned toward me with the sweetness gone. Your wife is not coming to save you, Nolan. Cheap women do not walk into Ashford signings. They wait outside until men are done using them. I smiled. That was the moment her confidence peaked. Preston smiled. Marla exhaled like the old house had finally returned. Isabel looked victorious for exactly 4 seconds. Then the main doors opened. Victoria entered with Ruth on her arm. Arlo came behind them carrying a small leather case. The estate steward followed with 2 guards. The room straightened as if someone had pulled a wire through every spine. Victoria wore black. Ruth wore pale blue and carried the Ashford trust seal in one hand. Isabel's smile faltered. Preston's confidence tried to hold. It failed around the edges. Victoria's eyes went first to the engagement contract, then to the ring box, then to me standing near the floral screen. She did not ask why. She looked at Isabel. Who placed my husband by the service wall? The formal hall forgot how to breathe. Not one gasp was needed. The ring box sat open. Preston's hand was still near it. Isabel stood in white, ready to be chosen, and Victoria Ashford had just used the word husband like a blade laid flat on glass. Isabel's mouth opened. Aunt Victoria, answer! Isabel looked at me, then back at Victoria. He is not your husband. You said the marriage was a mistake. Ruth is confused. He is using all of you. Ruth tapped the trust seal against her palm. Once. Every Ashford in the room heard it. Victoria walked to me. Not fast, not romantic, worse for Isabel, certain. She stopped beside me and held out her hand. I looked at it. 2 weeks earlier I had paid a stranger to fake a marriage so the Pierce family would stop selling my life by committee. Now Victoria Ashford was offering her hand in the middle of the richest family's formal hall, while my ex waited in white beside my brother. I took it. Her fingers were cold, her grip was not. Victoria turned toward the room. Nolan Pierce is my legal husband. He stands with me. Any guest who has difficulty understanding that can leave before the signing table becomes their problem. The staff coordinator moved first. She dragged the chair from the service wall toward Victoria's side of the signing table with both hands, cheeks burning. No one ordered her. That made it better. She had understood the new map before Isabel could argue with it. Isabel saw the chair move and stepped in front of it. That seat is for family. Ruth lifted the trust seal again. Then why are you blocking him? The coordinator stopped, trapped between the woman in white and the old madam with the seal. I reached around Isabel, took the chair by the back, and pulled it into place beside Victoria myself. The legs scraped across the polished floor. It was an ugly sound. Useful sounds often were. Every guest heard the servant-side chair become the husband chair. Preston looked at the chair like it had stolen from him personally. Maybe it had. For years he had not needed to hit me to keep me low. He only needed the room to agree where I should stand. That chair crossing the floor broke more of his power than another punch would have. Victoria sat first, then she looked at me. Nolan! I sat beside her. Isabel remained standing. That was the placement she had planned for me. The room did not miss it. Isabel's face drained, then color rushed back, ugly and hot. You were doing this because of Ruth, she said, because he wormed his way into her head. I looked at Isabel. You threatened to scare off my wife. You called her cheap. You said she was imaginary. Victoria's hand tightened around mine. Isabel heard the trap closing before she saw the shape. Isabel, Victoria said, the wife you threatened was me. That landed better than the slap. The mark on Isabel's cheek had faded. This one would not. Preston stepped forward and addressed Victoria. Isabel was emotional. Nolan provokes people. We should not let his resentment destroy an alliance between our families. Ruth looked at him. Alliance? Preston turned toward Ruth quickly. I have always respected this family. Yesterday was a misunderstanding. Tonight I hope to prove. You proved enough at my gate, Ruth said. Camille moved before Preston could bleed more. Mother, the engagement contract is ready. We can address family discomfort after the blessing. No, Ruth said. The word was small. The hall heard it like a door locking. Camille's smile froze. No? Ruth lifted the trust seal. No blessing, no trust seal, no Ashford support for this engagement tonight. Arthur's hand came off the board proxy packet. Mother, that is an overreaction. Ruth looked at him. You brought a proxy packet to your daughter's engagement because you thought romance could hide a board grab. Do not lecture me about overreaction. Arthur's jaw clenched. The estate steward stepped to the signing table and closed the ring box. Preston stared at the closed box like it had cursed him. The ring had been open for him, now it was shut in front of everyone. Isabel stared at it. Grandmother, you cannot withdraw my blessing because of Nolan. He is my ex. He is trying to punish me for choosing Preston. No, Ruth said. He is my grandson-in-law. You are trying to punish him for not staying rejected. The guests did not murmur. They recalculated. That was worse. Preston looked at Isabel. His face showed less worry for her feelings than for what her public collapse cost him. Isabel saw it. Her eyes flicked to me. Jealousy and humiliation fought across her face, and neither one won cleanly. You enjoy this? She whispered to me. A little, I said. But you keep making it easy, Marla snapped. Enough! The old command cracked across the hall from habit alone. People turned toward her. Marla seemed to realize too late that this was not the Pierce sitting room, and I was not standing beside Preston's shoe. Victoria looked at her. Marla Pierce, you do not raise your voice at my husband in my house. Husband again. Cleaner this time. Colder. Preston's hand curled. Richard stepped forward, trying to rescue dignity from a room where dignity had already filed for divorce. Victoria, perhaps we should speak privately. Nolan's legal status is complicated. His legal status is clearer than your family's birth story, Victoria said. Marla went white. Richard looked at Marla. Preston looked at Richard. A crack from the hospital had followed us into the formal hall and started chewing through the floorboards. Arthur heard opportunity inside the damage. He stepped around the signing table and aimed his voice at the room, not just Victoria. This is exactly why the Ashford board cannot ignore tonight. If Victoria Ashford publicly claims a husband from East Row Apartments while his Pierce status is disputed, that affects trust authority, board confidence, and the Bright Arc relationship. There it was. The engagement had failed, so Arthur grabbed the next weapon. Victoria's hand did not leave mine. Say what you mean. Arthur's eyes cut to me. I mean, your husband is a liability. A man with a hidden alias, a county record marriage nobody remembers, an unstable family claim, and an apartment that could not pay for this room's flowers should not walk into Ashford control because Ruth likes him. I smiled. You were doing so well until the flowers. Arthur ignored me. If he is Dr. Lark, prove the business authority. If he is Pierce family, prove the blood. If he is your husband, prove he is not bringing a fraud claim to Ashford's door. My phone rang. Jules Knox. The screen lit up in my hand while the ring box sat closed and Isabel's engagement contract waited unsigned. I answered on speaker. Jules did not waste a word. Bright Arc Energy's go public signing has been advanced. Ashford Group's alignment window is now. Your founder packet, Dr. Lark authorization, and spouse disclosure line all have to match before the room opens. Arthur's smile sharpened. Preston's did too, because desperate men love new confusion. Victoria looked at me. No fear. A question. I looked at Arthur, then at Preston, then at the closed ring box that Isabel had not earned. Good, I told Jules. Open the room. Arthur's voice rose over the speaker. Not until the board knows whether Nolan Pierce is a husband, a fraud, or a family scandal. The whole formal hall turned toward me. For once, the servant side had the best view. Arthur thought he had found the cleanest knife. He did not care whether I was Eleanor's son, Marla's mistake, or Preston's stolen shadow. He cared that uncertainty could delay Bright Arc Energy long enough to force Victoria into a weaker position. That was rich people at their ugliest. They did not need truth first. They needed leverage fast. Victoria did not let the formal hall become a board meeting. She closed the ring box, ordered the engagement table cleared, and sent one message through Arlo. Bring Eleanor Pierce to the east sitting room. Richard too. Agnes keeps the box. Marla heard the instruction and moved before anyone else did. Eleanor is too fragile. Ruth lifted the trust seal. So am I. Everyone keeps ignoring my hobbies. No one laughed. Marla tried again. This is Pierce family business. Victoria turned to her. You hid behind that sentence long enough. Preston stepped beside Marla, still trying to stand like a groom, though the contract had been removed behind him. Aunt Victoria, with respect. Do not use family language to borrow authority, Victoria said. You lost that privilege at my gate. Isabel flinched because the word gate had become a bruise she could not powder. 20 minutes later, the east sitting room held the people who had built the old lie and the people it had been built to control. Eleanor sat in a wheeled chair near the sofa, pale but awake. Agnes stood behind her with the faded blue memory box held against her chest. Ruth sat beside Eleanor, one hand resting over the Ashford trust seal as if even old metal knew to behave. Richard stood near the fireplace. He looked at the box like it had been delivered with a lawsuit attached. Marla stood beside Preston and kept one hand on his sleeve. That hand told me more than her face! She was not comforting him. She was anchoring herself to the son she had spent my life protecting. Arthur and Camille stayed near the door, pretending their greed was governance. Isabel stood behind Preston, too shaken to touch him and too proud to step away. Victoria stood at my right. Arlo guarded the door with the expression of a man who would rather fight a dozen intruders than listen to one more family secret. Richard broke first. This is madness, he said. My company is about to be dragged into a public signing. My son's engagement has been insulted, and now you want to interrogate my wife over baby things from decades ago. Eleanor's head lifted. Your wife? She asked. Richard turned toward her, startled by the edge in her voice. Eleanor looked at Marla. Which wife is allowed to remember her baby tonight? Marla's face tightened. Eleanor, you are upset. Nolan staged this. I said, I wish I had staged it. I would have made Preston kneel again for continuity. Preston snapped. Shut up. Ruth looked at him. You kneel badly and interrupt worse, Camille whispered. Mother. Ruth did not even blink. Agnes moved the memory box to Eleanor's lap. Marla stepped forward. Do not give her that! Agnes's hands trembled. Then she let go. The box settled on Eleanor's knees. That small sound changed the room. Marla had commanded Agnes for years. Agnes had obeyed because sickness makes households easy to bully. But the moment that box left Agnes's hands and entered Eleanor's, Marla lost the last servant she thought fear could buy. Eleanor opened the lid. Inside were tiny hospital keepsakes, a faded blanket, 2 old bracelets, and photographs no one had smiled in. Evidence sat there. But the box was not the engine. The engine was Marla's face when Eleanor touched the bracelet. Eleanor lifted the yellowed plastic strip. Her breath shook. I remember this. Agnes took one step forward before fear could drag her back. Marla asked me not to wake you that night, Agnes said to Eleanor. Marla turned on her. Stop. Agnes flinched, but she kept speaking. I was young. I thought I was protecting you. I saw 2 bracelets on the tray. Marla said the nurses made a mistake and that you were too weak for more confusion. I believed her because everyone in that house believed whatever she said loudest. Eleanor's lips parted. Richard's face closed like a man trying to deny a bill after seeing his own signature. Preston's voice went cold. Agnes, you are a caretaker, not a doctor. You do not know what you saw. Agnes looked at him then. For years, Agnes had called Preston by the family title with gentle respect. That night, the respect left before the title did. I know Marla told me never to mention the second bracelet, Agnes said. I know she took the crying baby out of your room before dawn. I know the baby she brought back did not cry the same way. Marla's hand flew up. Not toward me, toward Agnes. Arlo moved first. He caught Marla's wrist in midair and held it there, polite as a door lock. I would not, he said. Marla looked at him like he was beneath noticing. Arlo smiled without warmth. That is the expression people wear right before security becomes memorable. He released her. Marla lowered her hand, but the room had seen it. More importantly, Eleanor had seen it. The old story did not look like a misunderstanding anymore. It looked like a woman trying to slap the last witness back into furniture. Marla forced a laugh. You remember being ill? I remember asking why the bracelet looked different. Preston's eyes moved to Marla. Richard saw the look. At last. I almost hated how late his suspicion arrived. Richard turned to Marla. What is she talking about? Marla's chin lifted. She is confused. Ruth is confused. Nolan is feeding both of them stories because he hates Preston. Then answer cleanly, I said. Which baby wore the wrong bracelet? Marla's eyes cut to me. You do not get to question your mother. Eleanor flinched, not from fear this time, from anger trying to stand up inside a body that had been kept seated too long. Do not use that word, Eleanor said. The room hurt her. Marla heard it worst. Eleanor, Marla said softly, you do not understand what he is doing. I understand hunger, Eleanor said. Her hand tightened around the bracelet. I fed him because no one else did. I heard him cry in the garden because no one else went outside. I asked you why I cared so much, and you told me sickness makes women sentimental. Marla's mouth opened. No answer came out. Preston stepped forward, desperate to fill the space before Eleanor reached it. You are mixing childhood pity with blood. Nolan is using you. He always wanted what I had. I looked at him. Your future? Your mother? Or the bracelet? His face went red. Richard looked at Preston's reaction and finally lost a layer of denial. Marla, he said. Lower now. Answer. Marla turned on him. Do not command me like you were innocent in this house. You wanted a Pierce heir who could stand straight, smile right, and make your company look clean. You wanted a son people could present. Richard's face drained. Preston whispered, Mother. Again, panic. Again, too late. I stepped toward Marla. And you gave him Preston. Marla's eyes burned. I gave this family what it needed. Eleanor made a sound so small it almost disappeared. Ruth reached for her hand. Marla saw the damage and still chose pride. Preston was healthy, she said. He was mine. He was strong. He did not cry like he was begging the world to apologize for him. Eleanor was half dead, Richard was useless, and everyone expected me to watch my son grow up outside the place he deserved. The words came out so fast the room could not interrupt them. Then they landed. My son! Not Richard's chosen heir. Not the polished Pierce miracle. Marla's son. Preston closed his eyes. For 1 second all his softness vanished. He looked like exactly what he was, a man watching borrowed blood get repossessed. Eleanor stared at Marla. You took him? Marla pointed at me. I corrected a weakness. You were not strong enough to keep what you had. Eleanor stood. Agnes reached for her, but Eleanor shook her head once. Ruth let her go. The room did too. Eleanor crossed the small distance to me on shaking legs. I moved to help her, but she lifted one hand and stopped me. She wanted the step to be hers. Marla watched her come toward me and finally understood that the woman she had kept fragile had learned to aim. Eleanor reached me and touched my cheek, not the cheek Marla had slapped, the other one, as if she needed one clean place to start. My son, Eleanor said. 2 words. No document could have hit harder. No board vote, no birth certificate, no hospital file, no county seal. The woman who had fed me through garden doors claimed me in front of the woman who had starved me and called it discipline. Marla's face twisted. You cannot just say that. Eleanor turned to her. You do not get to tell me what a mother can say. Marla stepped forward. I raised him. Eleanor's voice shook, but it did not break. You punished him because he was mine. The bracelet had made the truth possible. Eleanor made it human. Richard sank into the chair near the fireplace. He looked at Preston like a man seeing an account balance turn negative in real time. Preston saw the look and grabbed for the old performance. Father, nothing changes. I am still the one who stayed. I am still the son you raised for Pierce Energy. Nolan cannot walk in because of a sick woman's sentence and take everything. Richard stared at him. Then he laughed once. It was not humor. It was humiliation leaving the body the wrong way. You knew, Richard said. Preston's mouth opened. You knew enough to panic. Preston looked at Marla. Richard saw that too. Good. The room was finally teaching him how to read. Marla tried to recover. Richard, listen to me. Preston is still valuable. Nolan hates this family. He will ruin Pierce Energy out of spite. No, I said. I will ruin lies out of spite. The company can apply like everyone else. Richard looked at me then. For years he had looked through me unless I embarrassed him. Now he had to look at me, because every status line in his house had been drawn wrong. Nolan, he said, do not start with. Sorry, I said. It will make the room smell cheap. His mouth closed. I respected him more for that than for any apology he could have performed. Arthur stepped in from the door, sensing the collapse but still hungry enough to feed on it. This proves my point. The Pierce identity issue is unstable. Bright Art cannot move while the signatory is in a family scandal. Victoria looked at him. No, this proves your challenge found an answer. An answer? Arthur said. A confession in a sitting room is not a governance structure. Ruth lifted the trust seal and hit it against the table. The sound cracked through his sentence. It is enough for family, Ruth said, and family is what you used as a weapon tonight. Arthur stopped. Camille touched his sleeve. Even greed knows when the room has turned. Preston's eyes darted toward Isabel again. That tiny movement told the room he had already stopped thinking like a son and started thinking like a fiancé losing market value. This changes nothing between us, he told Isabel. My position is still Pierce. My future is still Pierce Energy. The Ashford signing still needs stability. Isabel looked at the missing ring box through the open doors. Stability, she repeated. It did not sound like belief. It sounded like math being redone after someone changed the numbers. Preston heard it and panicked harder. I was a baby, he said to Richard. Whatever mother did, I did not choose it. You raised me, you trained me, you told everyone I was the heir. You cannot erase me because Nolan found a sad story. Richard stared at him. For a moment, I almost agreed with Preston. He had been a baby too. Then he looked at me and added, he was still the one nobody wanted. There it was, the little cruelty he did choose. Eleanor's hand tightened on the bracelet until Agnes gently covered her fingers. Richard saw it. This time, he did not look away. Richard stood slowly. He walked to Preston. Preston straightened out of habit. For one wild second, I thought Richard would protect him anyway. Men like Richard loved hierarchy more than truth, and Preston had always looked like easier hierarchy. Then Richard reached up and removed the small Pierce crest pin from Preston's lapel. Preston's face went blank. It was a tiny object. Gold. Polished. Meaningless to anyone outside that family. Inside that room, it was a public stripping. Your Pierce Energy signing authority is frozen, Richard said. Your heir access is frozen. Your engagement claim through this family is frozen until I know which part of my house is not built on fraud. Preston grabbed his wrist. Father, Richard pulled free. Do not call me that until I decide whether the word survived tonight. Marla slapped Richard. The sound was sharp and stupid. Every guard moved. Richard did not touch his cheek. He only looked at her. You leave the Pierce house tonight, he said. Marla laughed, wild now. You think you can throw me out? I gave you the son you wanted. Eleanor stepped between Marla and me. Not because I needed shielding, because she needed the room to see where she stood. You gave him a lie, Eleanor said, and you stole mine. Preston turned toward Isabel, reaching for the last soft place he had. She stepped back. Not far, just enough. It was the cruelest distance in the room. He saw it and broke in a quieter way than I expected. Isabel, he said. She looked at the closed ring box on the cleared table beyond the sitting room doors. She did not answer. Victoria's phone buzzed. Arlo checked his tablet at the same time. Bright Arc signing room is ready, Arlo said. Arthur straightened, still trying to turn ruin into delay. This is exactly why it cannot proceed. It proceeds, Victoria said, with the truth in the room. Ruth stood, slower than Eleanor, but with enough authority that even the guards made space. Then let us go. I am very fragile and very tired of amateurs. We moved from the East sitting room to the Ashford Group signing floor with no time for speeches. That was the only mercy of the night. If we had paused, someone would have tried to make pain more elegant than it deserved. The signing room was already lit. A long table waited under the Bright Arc Energy logo. A sealed founder packet sat at the center. Cameras were covered until Victoria gave permission. Jules Knox stood near the packet with his hands folded, looking exactly like a man who had buried enough contingency plans to sleep well. Eleanor stayed beside me. Her hand touched my sleeve once and did not let go. Victoria noticed. She said nothing. That was better than making it a performance. Preston entered last. No crest pin, no ring, no air certainty. His face had gone calm in a way I recognized. It was the calm people wear when they have decided to set the building on fire because they no longer own a room inside it. He walked past Richard, past Marla, past Isabel, and straight toward the signing table. Then he pointed at the founder packet. Do not let him open that, Preston said, loud enough for the whole room. Nolan Pierce is a fraud, Dr. Lark is stolen, Bright Arc is stolen, and every woman in this room is too sick or too desperate to see it. Jules looked at me. Victoria looked at Preston. Preston had finally chosen the perfect room to lose everything at once. Preston called me a fraud in the one room where lying had become expensive. The Bright Arc Energy signing table sat under white lights. The founder packet waited in the center. Victoria stood at my right. Eleanor stood at my left. Ruth sat near the front with the Ashford trust seal in her lap and Mr. Whiskers asleep under her chair like even the dog was tired of rich people performing authority. Preston pointed at the packet again. "Open it and he ruins all of you," he said. "He's been stealing names since the county clerk. Husband, Dr. Lark, Bright Arc founder, now Eleanor's son. How many titles does one illegitimate stray get before somebody asks for proof?" Eleanor's hand tightened on my sleeve. Victoria's face did not move. Ruth woke Mr. Whiskers by tapping the trust seal against her chair. "He asks for proof after losing the ring," Ruth said. "Convenient timing." Isabel stood behind Preston with one hand near her throat. Her white dress from the engagement hall looked wrong now, like a costume from a play everyone else had left. Marla hovered near the door, pale and furious. Richard stood apart from her. Arthur and Camille had followed too, because greed loves a second funeral. Jules Knox stepped beside the founder packet. He did not look at Preston, he looked at me. "Permission?" Preston laughed. "Permission? From him?" "Yes," Jules said. "From the controlling founder of Bright Arc Energy." That sentence landed clean, not with shock, with consequence. Jules opened the packet. The top page showed my legal name, Nolan Pierce, the research alias beneath it, Dr. Lark, the founder authority line, Bright Arc Energy. The room read it in pieces. Preston read it as a wound. His mouth opened, but Jules kept going before Vanity could start stitching. Dr. Lark's patents, Bright Arc Energy's controlling interest, and the Ashford Group alignment are all tied to Nolan Pierce's authorization. The spouse disclosure line was held until Victoria Ashford chose whether to sign as legal spouse, corporate partner, or both. Arthur's eyes sharpened. "That is still a conflict." Victoria stepped forward. "No, it is disclosure. You should try it sometime." A board member near the wall lowered his gaze fast enough to survive. Preston slapped his palm on the table. "He forged it. He forged all of it." Professor Miles Brenner helped him. Jules helped him. Victoria wants him because he is useful. Eleanor wants him because she is confused. Ruth wants him because she is sick. Preston used the word sick. Ruth heard it clearly. She stood, slowly. The dog under her chair barked once, offended on schedule. Ruth placed the trust seal on the signing table and looked at Preston as if he had finally become too small for mercy. "You used my illness when it paid you," she said. "Now you call it sickness when it pays Nolan. Poor boy. You learned greed but not timing." Preston's face flushed. Marla stepped forward. "Do not speak to my son that way." Eleanor turned. "Your son," she said. 2 words. Marla stopped. The room did not need the whole confession again. That was the power of a real collapse. Once the wall fell, nobody had to keep describing the bricks. Richard looked at Marla. "You have no standing here." Marla's mouth tightened. "You needed me when you wanted Preston clean." "I needed truth," Richard said. "I was too vain to ask for it. That was the closest he came to confession. I let it stand. Not all weak men deserved a speech." Preston grabbed at the last piece of the old world. "Even if Bright Arc is his, Pierce Energy can still challenge family theft. He used our name. He used our house. He used Eleanor's pity." "No," I said. "I survived your house. There is a difference." Jules placed a second page beside the first. "Pierce Energy's direct license path remains frozen. Any future application excludes Preston Pierce as signatory. Richard Pierce may reapply under standard review once family authority is corrected." Preston stared at Richard. Richard did not save him. That silence was worth more than an apology. Isabel finally moved. She stepped toward Victoria, not Preston. "Aunt Victoria," she said, voice thinner now. "You cannot sign beside him after this. He humiliated our whole family." Victoria looked at her niece. "No, Isabel. He exposed it. He slapped me. After you threatened his wife." Isabel's eyes flicked to me, then to Victoria's hand. The jealousy was still there, but it had no throne left to sit on. "You were never supposed to choose him," Isabel whispered. Victoria's answer was quiet enough to make everyone lean toward it. "That is why the choice matters." Then she took the pen from Jules. Arthur moved quickly. "If Victoria signs as wife, the Ashford branch will demand board review." Victoria looked at him. "The branch review ended when you used Ruth's treatment to smuggle control through Clear Spring Therapeutics. Your access is already revoked. Your daughter's engagement route is closed. Your proxy packet is dead paper. Pick your next sentence like it costs money." Arthur did not pick one. Camille did. "Mother," she said to Ruth, softer than I had ever heard her, "do not let Victoria throw away family stability for a man who arrived through a clerical mystery." Ruth's hand went to the marriage books Arlo had placed beside her. The old leather covers looked small under the signing lights. Then Ruth looked at Mr. Whiskers. The dog yawned. Victoria's face tightened. Ruth! Ruth was not looking at the dog anymore. She was looking through the room, past the lights, past the signing table, back toward a night none of us had been allowed to remember cleanly. It was raining, Ruth said. Nobody moved. Victoria set the pen down. Ruth's voice stayed soft, but the softness did not weaken it. Solace 9 had not made her young. It had not made her memory perfect. It had simply opened a locked door long enough for the truth to step through. Victoria came to me with blood on her sleeve, Ruth said. Nolan was with her. He kept saying he was not family, so he should not be in the room. Stubborn boy, always trying to leave before people can owe him. My throat tightened. A flash crossed my mind. Rain on county steps, a black cat under a parked car. Victoria's hand gripping my sleeve so hard her nails cut skin. I had carried that memory as a bad dream from a night I thought belonged to a street fight and too little sleep. Ruth kept speaking. Arthur's branch had a vote ready, she said. They wanted Victoria called unstable after the crash. They wanted the trust line moved before I could stop it. They thought unmarried meant easier to isolate, easier to replace. Arthur's face went gray. Camille whispered, Mother, stop. Ruth did not. I told Victoria a husband outside their branch would block the fastest knife. She said no. Nolan said absolutely no. Then the cat ran under the car and Victoria nearly climbed him like a tree. A terrible, inappropriate laugh escaped Arlo. Victoria turned red at the ears. Even then, even there, the room needed the small ridiculous truth more than another legal explanation. Ruth smiled faintly. He called her bossy, she called him impossible. I said those were vows with less decoration. Victoria's eyes moved to me, the memory sharpened by pieces. Stonebridge County Clerk's office after hours, not through a bribe, but through Ruth Ashford's ability to make public servants fear disappointing her. 2 signatures, Victoria saying clear and furious, this changes nothing. Me answering, good, I like my disasters temporary. Ruth laughing like she had planned 3 generations around our spite, then headlights. Glass, a scream. Waking up days later with bruised ribs, no county memory, and Marla telling me I had gotten into a fight because that was the only explanation anyone expected from me. Victoria touched her wrist. I saw it then, the old faint scar near her watch. She remembered too. Not all at once. Enough. Ruth looked at Arthur. I hid the books because you were still hunting for the weakness. I let the marriage sleep until it could protect her again. Then Nolan walked into the clerk's office like fate had finally learned punctuality. Arthur tried to speak. Victoria stopped him without looking. Arlo. Arlo stepped forward. Arthur and Camille Ashford are removed from all Bright Arc, Solace 9 and Ruth Trust adjacent access pending board action already authorized. Security can escort them whenever you give the word. Victoria looked at Arthur. Word, she said. Security moved. Arthur did not fight. Camille did not beg. They understood boards, trusts, and access. They understood being cut out more clearly than shame. As they were escorted out, Camille looked at Isabel. Isabel looked away. That was one path closed. Preston watched Arthur lose access and made the mistake of thinking noise could still work. So the whole marriage came from panic, he said. A crash, a sick old woman's scheme, and 2 people who did not even remember. That is your grand romance? I looked at him. No. That was the first signature. Victoria picked up the pen again. Her eyes held mine, not soft, not begging, not uncertain. The woman at the county office had threatened to ruin me. The woman at the signing table had already seen what ruined me and chosen to stand beside what remained. This one, she said, is the choice. She signed first. Victoria Ashford. Not hidden, not under Ruth's pressure, not because Arthur had a knife at her back. Beside the spouse disclosure line, she wrote her name with the same cold precision she used to cut men out of boardrooms. Then Jules turned the packet toward me. I signed. Nolan Pierce, Dr. Lark, Bright Arc Energy founder. The pen felt lighter than it should have. Preston lunged for the packet. Arlo was already there. He caught Preston by the wrist and twisted just enough to make him bend, not kneel. That would have been too generous a callback. Preston folded over the table where the founder packet sat beyond his reach. Careful, I said. You are standing near documents you cannot afford, Arlo muttered. I enjoyed that, professionally. Growth, I said. Victoria did not smile, her eyes did. Preston tried to yank free, but Arlo did not give him enough pain to make him a martyr, just enough pressure to remind him the room no longer confused noise with authority. You cannot throw me out, Preston said. Without me, Pierce Energy loses the Ashford Bridge. Without me, Isabel has no reason to stay tied to your family. Without me, Richard loses the only son he prepared. Eleanor's voice answered from beside me. He prepared the wrong son. Richard flinched. He deserved that. Preston did too. Victoria looked at Arlo. Remove him from the signing floor, not the building. I want him close enough to hear when the announcement goes live." Arlo's expression brightened in a way he probably believed was professional, with pleasure restrained by policy. "Try harder," Victoria said. "Yes." Security took Preston to the glass-side room beside the signing floor. He was not gone. That was the punishment. Through the glass he could still see the packet, the signatures, Isabel's distance, Richard's silence, and every title he had tried to steal landing on the man he had called servant. Ruth watched him through the glass and nodded once. "Aquariums are useful. The fish learns who is outside." "Ruth," Victoria said. "Very fragile," Ruth replied. Richard stepped toward Preston. "You are done." Preston looked up, wild now. "You would throw me away for him?" Richard's answer was tired. "No, for the truth you helped bury." Marla screamed then. Not a word, just sound. She tried to reach Preston, but Eleanor stepped into her path. Eleanor's body was frail. Her stare was not. "You do not touch my son," Eleanor said. Marla froze. The wrong son stood behind her. The right one stood beside me. No one had to explain it. Security took Preston first. He fought until he saw Isabel watching. Then he stopped fighting and tried to look dignified. It failed. Isabel did not run to him. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw the girl who had once brought me coffee and liked that I never bent quickly enough for her world. Then, she looked at Victoria's signature beside mine, whatever claim she thought she still had died there. "Nolan," she said. I waited. She had used my name as bait, insult, pity, and ownership. This time, it had nowhere to go. Victoria looked at her niece. "The engagement is terminated. Your board path through Preston is terminated. Any future access comes through work, not romance, pity, or threats." Isabel's eyes filled. "And him?" she asked. Victoria glanced at me. "He was never your access." Isabel went still. The slap had marked her cheek. That sentence took the last excuse out of her hands. She left without touching the ring box. The estate steward carried it away like an object returning from a failed errand. Jules closed the founder packet after the signatures were recorded. "Bright Arc alignment is active. Ashford Group partnership cleared. Pierce Energy frozen pending corrected application. Clear Spring Therapeutics remains under clean terms." Jules leaned toward me once the security door closed. "The public line can omit the family matter." "No," Victoria said before I could answer. "The public line states Bright Arc Energy and Ashford Group signed after full disclosure. No lies, no euphemisms, no polite fog for people who used fog as a weapon." Jules looked at me. I nodded. That was the difference between secrecy and privacy. Secrecy had fed Preston. Privacy had protected Ruth until she could remember. We were done feeding the wrong one. No long report, no technical lecture, just consequences stacked in plain language. Preston lost the Dr. Lark fantasy. Isabel lost the bride path. Arthur and Camille lost Bright Arc and Solace. 9 access. Marla lost the right to call cruelty motherhood. Richard lost the comfort of pretending silence was not a choice. Eleanor kept holding my sleeve. Ruth looked satisfied enough to outlive all of them. Then she reached into Arlo's leather case and pulled out a folder I had hoped never to see again. "The divorce draft." Arlo blinked at Ruth. "That was secured." "Poorly," Ruth said. Victoria looked at the folder. So did I. Ruth held it out between us. "This document has bad manners." I took one side. Victoria took the other. For a second, neither of us pulled. Then Victoria said, "No loophole." I remembered the hospital bed. Ruth's weak finger. The lie that had become less false every time someone tried to use it against us. "No loophole," I said. "We tore the draft in half." Ruth clapped once. Mr. Whiskers barked because applause was apparently contagious. Arlo looked pained. "I will need to update several files." "You love files," I said, "not emotional ones." Victoria looked at the torn paper in my hand. "You can still leave if you want." She said it quietly. Only I heard the cost. That was Victoria's way. She could claim me in front of her room, cut off a branch of her family, and sign beside me under lights. But when the real choice arrived, she offered the exit cleanly. I looked around the signing room, at Eleanor, who had fed me before she knew why, at Ruth, who had weaponized eggs, dogs, memory, and trust law with equal enthusiasm, at Jules, who looked relieved enough to hide it, at Arlo, who still suspected me and somehow belonged in the room because of it, at Victoria, the woman they had called my nobody wife, standing under the Bright Arc lights with her signature beside mine. I had spent most of my life being placed near doors. Servant side, garden door, hospital doorway, family edge, the cheap place where people put a body they might need later but did not want to claim. I looked at the torn divorce draft, then I dropped my half into the trash beside the signing table. "I already left the servant side," I said. "I am not going back." Victoria's face did not soften, it steadied. That was better. She dropped her half of the draft after mine. Ruth leaned toward Eleanor and whispered loudly, I told you husbands look useful in dark suits. Eleanor laughed. It was small, tired, and broken around the edges. It was also the first time I had ever heard her laugh without checking whether Marla approved. I stood at the Bright Arc signing table with Victoria Ashford beside me, Eleanor Pierce's hand on my arm, Ruth Ashford's trust seal in front of us, and Dr. Lark's name finally attached to my own where everyone could see it. The people who mocked my wife had watched her sign beside me. The people who called me a servant had watched the air seat move under their feet, and for once, no one in the room asked where I belonged. They had all just seen me choose it.